School District Board of Directors to order at 6:05 p.m. Today is October 2nd, 2019, and we are in the MRUSD Central Office Boardroom. We have 8 board members present, representing 7 votes. The first item is the agenda review. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, I look for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Al.
Second.
Thanks, Sally. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, visitors, like we do have some. If you're here to address the board about the transcript update, which is the next time, almost the next time on the agenda, I would suggest that you probably wait until we get that update, and then I'll give everybody a chance to talk. But if you would like to address the board now, you can do that as well. Okay. We have the consent agenda. Has the minutes of September 18th. Financial statement, some new hires. Does anybody have anything on here that they would like to remove from the consent agenda for further discussion? If I don't hear any objections, the consent agenda will be adopted. Okay, hearing none, the consent agenda is adopted. Okay, item 6A, old business transcript update. Chris and Preston.
I'll be very brief, and I know most good people want to give you their feedback around BFA transcript and proficiencies. So I did want to at least start with some handouts. I don't know if people have seen some of these at the board level. This is our school profile and a copy of a transcript just for your review. We talked about this at the last meeting, and it had not been developed. We were in the final stages, so I just want to make sure that you know that we did present that. I know Preston did that, and some of the other guidance staff about 2 weeks ago. I know there are still questions that remain, and I just want to at least make sure that you have the product. Also, and this would be good, I think, for the public, and I'm not sure if we need more copies. I wasn't quite sure how many folks would be here, but this is a set of frequently asked questions. I know we fielded some questions from the good folks in the audience, from the students and from the families, and wanted to do our best to try to respond to those in a clear and factual way, so that everybody has the same baseline of information. I also know that people have individual concerns that we tried to work through, and I did send a message out to families. I didn't make copies of this, but I do want the board to have it as part of the record in our effort to keep communication close, so that we can work together and try to ensure that as we work through the final phase of this transcript development and work on making adjustments to our proficiency-based system, that we continue to keep the lines of communication open. We've received a lot of good and important questions and feedback from many of the folks here, and our desire is to keep that as an ongoing feedback loop. We're not going anywhere. We want to continue to work hard until we get it right and meet people's needs, and be it as a group or as individuals. So I just wanted to give you the information based on some of the documents that we've worked on, what's gone to our families, that we've communicated, and our path forward. We have 2 important milestones going ahead. One is that we want to make sure that we have clear feedback for families relative to progress report and parent nights in Conference City, which will be coming up in about a month. And also that when report cards and college schools are finalized, that those scores reflect the level of accuracy and clearly reflect what kids know what to do, especially for seniors who are going to be renewing BFA and either pursuing employment in various colleges. We want to make sure that as a school we put them in the best position possible. So I know it's been challenging, and I do appreciate people's patience. and know that we have continued to work well and the decisions we made, always with the best interests of the students and families in mind. So I can respond later on, but I just wanted to at least give you that update based on our documents and our path forward. Anything that you need to add?
No, we did distribute the transcript to all the seniors last week, middle of last week, about a week ago. And students have been coming in and seeing their counselors, families have been coming in and talking, we've been doing our best to clarify information and address concerns as they come up.
At this point, do we have those problems addressed for families who have come in?
No.
Okay.
Not all of them, for sure.
At this time, I would give members of the public a chance to speak. I don't have a list or anything.
Okay. Good evening, Liz Gamache, City of Saint Albans, return visit. Thank you for the time at the last school board meeting. And what I've come to realize since that last meeting, because I've been contacted by many parents who've been asking questions, is I think there's one big question is how did we end up where we are right now with this level of confusion and stress, concern, because for especially for those of us with the seniors in the application process, time is of the essence, and there's a lot at stake, and we don't know what the impact of errors or inconsistencies in transcripts will be. We may never clearly know that, what scholarship might be missed, what financial aid might be different than what it otherwise would have been. So it's stressful, it's our kids, it's emotional, and I think you'll find that we've all who are here have done a lot of learning in the last couple of weeks to attempt to understand the system a little more clearly. I'm going to say some basic things and then I'll say some specific things. The reason I'm being basic is I suspect that even some of you around the table at the school board may be learning as we go through this situation. So here's something that is from the South Burlington website. I think this is a helpful context. The primary, and because this is about a grading system, this is about the implementation and the ability for us to use a grading system as an effective tool to monitor our students' progress, for our students to monitor their progress, know when they made achievements, and know when they're off course so they can course correct. So the primary purpose of a grading system is to clearly, accurately, consistently, and fairly communicate learning progress and achievement to students, families, post-secondary institutions, and prospective employers. We're 3 years into the proficiency model, and frankly, I'm concerned that we've been asked to do too much, too fast, with too little support. And when I say we, I think that probably means students, parents, teachers, counselors, and administrators. This is a state mandate to move to the proficiency-based system. It's a paradigm shift. It's not making little tweaks to a system. It's a heavy lift, and we're not there yet. You know, we're moving, I hope, towards achieving proficiency in this system, but I don't think we've got a 3 yet. Maybe we've moved from a 1 to a 2. So the issue that comes up now, why now? We've been in this mode for 3 years. Why so much attention at this point? Well, it really has been the release of the transcripts that has given us a tool that sees what that end destination looks like and how close or far away our students have come to achieving it. So it's been an important piece of reporting information. It's the first time we've seen a transcript under the proficiency system. You're going to hear different examples, concerns, questions tonight. It's an accumulation of things that have probably happened over the last 3 years. And I don't anticipate that these issues are going to be resolved at tonight's meeting, but they need to be brought out and highlighted. I do appreciate the attention that we have been getting to help work through some of the issues, and certainly we're able to see improvements and some corrections, but we still have work to do. We're confused, we don't understand the system, and we've got a lot at stake. So, status quo right now, by way of background. We have been using for the last few years 3 different grading systems. We now have a transcript, the first time we're seeing a transcript under proficiency-based model, just seeing it for the first time, so we're digesting. There's a report card, and that's been inconsistent. We had, I believe, a report card for our seniors freshman year, discontinued the sophomore year, back the junior year. That's an important piece of information that feeds into the transcript and helps us to get a snapshot of how our kids are doing. And then we've got the application. Today, this year, the PowerSchool Unified Classroom app, which is, this is the 4th platform that we've had in 4 years. We started year 1 with PowerSchool, then I believe we had Canvas, we switched to a different one. 3rd year, back to PowerSchool Plus, and now PowerSchool Unified Classroom. So talking about the importance of consistency in terms of understanding, using these systems as a tool, it's been challenging and difficult to monitor progress because these systems have not been consistent, and as we as a community, teachers, students, parents, counselors are adapting to this new system, we're learning as we go. So as a result, they've lacked accuracy, consistency, clarity, and I think fairness at times. Communication with students and parents about how to use them has been inadequate. It's been confusing. So it's kind of like having a GPS that you forgot to do your updates on. And in fact, I'll refer to something that I came across that's on the BFA website, the Proficiency-Based Learning Handbook. I think it's on page 11. I didn't get it when I first read it, but I'm getting it now. There's an analogy that compares proficiency model to using a GPS. What we're looking at is providing clear and concise description of where our students should go, what the goals are. That's how it should work. And then we take a look at where they're starting, and then we monitor the progress. Did they get to that final destination or not? Now, as I'm understanding, under proficiency, I might take a different path. I might take an alternative path than my fellow student. That's okay if I get there. I might take a few steps forward and backwards, and if in the end, by the deadline I get there, I've achieved proficiency or a 4 going beyond the basic proficiency. So just imagine not having a good GPS to know where you're going and to get there. It's complicated, confusing, and I'm going to give an example. My son is here tonight. He wasn't exactly sure where this was. I think a couple days ago I said, oh, you know, it's down on that street off Lake Street. I think it's kind of near where the puddle is. Well, that I give myself a 1 on, or 2. That's not very helpful to him. I reached back out and I said, 28 Catherine Street. Go in the door marked boardroom. I gave him clear and concise directions so that he could get here for the meeting. So this is what, I think this is the essence of what's been happening. We haven't had that clear navigation path. So I'm almost done. High-level concerns, and you're going to hear more from other folks, I'm sure. This move to proficiency and the lack of a letter grade system means we have to rely on 1, 2, 3, or 4. The bandwidth for a 3 is wide. A 4 is clear. That's up near the top. That's, I'm presuming, an A+. But the bandwidth for a B, if we were looking at the letter grades, would go to the C range up to the higher B range. And just knowing that a student is a 3 doesn't give you a good idea whether he's on the high and low and middle end of that spectrum. Grades, letter grades, used to help us to figure out more precisely where our students were landing. Our transcripts. There are several, I appreciate they are much, much better than what they were this summer. And we've in some ways moved in a very positive direction in terms of summarizing grades. But they are confusing. Haven't read the FAQs yet, so perhaps it's answered. But I'm really struggling to understand the blending of a proficiency-based GPA and the traditional grade GPA. This was brought up by another parent when we met a couple of weeks ago. I don't think there's clear explanation of that, so I'd like to understand it more, and I question the statistical legitimacy of how it's calculated. The grading scale, I'll also mention on the subject of transcripts, the transferable skills page is not consistent with the format on the first page that summarizes academic achievements. Lots of numbers for semester 1, semester 2, year ends. If it's going to be used, summarize it, and I would suggest if it's going to be used, what would be more reflected as an average grade for the year on those transferable skills. We continue to have a conversation, which I brought to your attention 2 weeks ago, questioning the accuracy of some of the marks that were relayed onto the transcript. I have been working with guidance on this, and we don't have an answer yet. By way of reminder, the situation where if I go into Power School, I can see marks of 4 for the second semester, yet the grade that's been transferred to the transcript is a 3. So I don't know why that is, and I'm hoping that can be recalculated. It may not seem like it makes a big difference, but it can. In this new system, it impacts what the colleges are seeing and whether they're seeing a student get a 3 or a 3.5 or something higher if it's not right. This is also being used to calculate awards. Another concern that I believe we raised at the last meeting. If it's not accurate, how fair is it for students? So I question the integrity of this calculation, and I hope we get answers soon and that it's fixed. Messaging and communication has been so difficult. It has created breaches of trust. I think we may have some students that wish to speak to this, but what concerns me is some of the messages we've had as students or parents around what we should be striving for. And I think so often kids have heard, all you gotta do is get a 3. Get a 3 and you'll be fine. There's not been a good understanding of what it means to get a 4 and how that will relate on the college transcript. The timeliness of the transcripts creates stress and pressures to get corrections as soon as possible. And the lack of letter grades is confusing. Some schools, as I understand it, are using both. I think that might be a solution moving forward. Using the grades to provide more clarity, more granularity on where a student stands, and then also using the proficiency marks in the background. So recommendations, and I'm almost done. For seniors, I feel a sense of urgency. Any corrections or updates or improvements need to be done forthwith. It would be great to have the opportunity very soon to have small forums for parents and students to ask questions and have answers. Principal Mosca has committed to doing that, so I appreciate that, but the urgency is do it ASAP. We've got to prepare our students to return to a traditional grading system for many who are going to colleges where they go back to the ABC system and they get one shot at taking a test, one shot at turning their homework in on time. Please consider how we can help them be prepared for that shift so that they will be successful their freshman year if they go on to college. And I also suggest that we consider, for clarity, providing support to students to be able to include their own personal resume with their college applications. We've done this for Robert. It's been well received by an admissions counselor that he recently met with. It's his personal snapshot of how he's done. And I think that given the circumstance, it might be a way that we could provide some remediation for students who have been behind the 8 ball and getting early applications in. If we could pay to have somebody come in and do their resumes for them, it would be a small investment, but I would think it might help to make things right. In the longer term, we've got to do a deep dive, a process review. We would want to do that no matter what, I think. So I would ask you to consider how that is done and potentially consider having an independent third party, not an administrator, not a parent, have somebody who can come in neutrally to take a look at how we've been doing things. We've got to invite feedback in the future. It's a two-way street. And I would recommend considering going back to going to a dual system of grades and proficiency marks. I've said a lot. I really do want to just finish by saying this is a student issue, it's a family issue, it's a community issue, and we are all a community. And I do have deep faith that in this community, we will work together to do right by our kids and to do better. So I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you tonight, and I look forward to future constructive conversations to continue improving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda Humminford. Unfortunately, I'm here. I really don't want to be here, but I'm here because my daughter's transcript is not accurate. Hasn't been accurate since we had it. So I feel like we're on October 2nd, 2019. We've been doing this for 3 years, and it's just a real letdown. These kids, families, communities, so I echo this is comments. I've done a lot of research, both on the Agency of Education, looking at other schools and how they're handling this proficiency requirement, and I feel like we didn't get it right. The Vermont Proficiency Graduation Requirement stated that you need to, 1, pass your academic class, business as usual, and it says, determined by your local policy, period. Academic local policy. Our local policy 3 years ago was grades. It then said, secondly, you need to show transferable skills and you need to be proficient in those grades. Those language, math, sciences, you need to be able to, your teachers need to assess you in a proficiency saying that, okay, not that I just get an A, but I can actually use them. I'm proficient in clear and effective communication in calculus. I can self-direct myself in calculus. I can create practical problem solving. I can be responsible citizenship. I can be informed. That's what the proficiency base was all about. It's about taking the academic and marrying it with when I go to life, when I go to college, when I go to get a job, how can I use all this knowledge? How do I use it in skills and be real and be effective and be a citizen? And so we've done a disjustice to these kids. So 5 to 6 schools around 30, 40 miles of this radius have done letter grades, GPAs, and then they've done proficiency. Our school, 3 years ago, decided we're not going to give letter grades anymore. We're just going to give number grades. And we're going to be numbers 1 through 4. And academically, you can't graduate unless you get a 3 from that class, both academically and proficiently. So therefore, we have a range for our 2020 class. The average GPA is a 3.0 to a 4.0. How is that possible? Explain that to me. It's impossible. That's what we've done to this class. We've brought the bottom all the way up to a 3.0 because they can't pass the class unless they have a 3. They can't pass the class unless they have a 3. They can't go higher than a 4. So now we have a 3.0 to a 4.0. There's no differentiation between AP classes, college classes, nothing. That's what we've done.
Well, the achievement gap is gone.
I don't know what that is. So I think that we have done a complete injustice to our students, our family, and our community. And that's it. So you're going to graduate a class from 2020, and probably 2021, unless you take some immediate actions that say that your students are all between a 3.0 and a 4.0, and that is just not acceptable. I talked to my son today, he graduated from BFA, he goes, Mom, how is that possible? That's impossible, Mom. They can't have a 3.0. My daughter came home crying, saying, Mom, I've taken AP this, I've taken colleges, I've taken, all my friends, we're all the same. No, there's no differentiation, 0. I ask you, how did we get here? I'm so frustrated. I have so much anxiety. I've spent so much time, I have a full-time job. I spent so much time advocating for her and trying to get this right. And I just feel like we did not do it. We're so far off. It should have been simple. It should have been simple. You continue to do your grades and you just add in the proficiencies. Those proficiencies were already being part of the grade probably anyway. Right? I mean, creative thinking, citizenship, communication. I mean, so we really, really need to deep dive. This is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. And I still don't have the right GPA. Proficiency based learning was how it was described to us 3 years ago. Don't worry, don't worry. Semester 1 it doesn't matter if you're a 1, a 2, a 3, it doesn't matter. What matters is semester 2. As long as by semester 2 you're proficient, then your year grade will be your proficiency based on semester 2. That's how you end up. Because you're not supposed to know anything semester 1, by you graduate, and the transcripts are messed up. I've highlighted it, I think it's gonna get fixed. I've been told it's gonna get fixed. I'm waiting for it to get fixed because I don't have it yet. The awards, bronze, gold, silver, okay, well, those are all wrong because the transcripts are wrong. I'm gonna get a bronze medal because I have 70% 4s, I guess. I'm gonna get, but they're not accurate. So I really, really think, and as Liz said, we need to deep dive this and it needs to change now because you can't do this to the next classes. It's just not fair. It's not fair for the effort that some of these kids have put in. And it's the top kids that are complaining because their GPAs are the ones that they have the same. The lower classes are happy because I am a 3.0, I'm a 3.1. Like they're happy. They're not in here complaining. So the last thing I'm gonna say, and this really bothers me, and I looked on all the websites again of these schools within our 30-40-mile radius about high honors and honors. And high honors and honors is really about academic achievement. It's about how did you perform academically? Did you get an A? Did you get a B? How did you perform academically? And BFA has changed, so this is how they give honors and high honors. If you get a 3 in a transferable skill, self-direction and citizenship, you're honors. What's happened with academics? If you get 4s in those, you're high honors. So the net being, by the end of semester 2, every kid on BFA is going to be honors or high honors because they have to be, or else you're not going to pass the class. That's how it's working. I mean, so to me, it's like, I'm embarrassed that that's how you're going to classify honors and high honors. Honors is academics. It's how did you do? How did you perform in the class, in the knowledge, in the skill? Like, it's not about, oh, I'm really good to people, I'm nice, I can self-direct myself. That has nothing to do with high honors. And I went on all those websites and looked at it, and the schools around the community, they're still using, whether it's an A or a B, or how do you get honors, how do you get high honors, and we're so off the ballpark. I'm sorry, but I'm very passionate about this. I'm very concerned about it. I'm upset about it. I had faith and trust in this school and the school board, and I feel like I've been really let down. It's really not okay. And so I really think something has to change. So I guess that's all I'm going to say. So thank you for listening to me, and I hope that we make some changes that improve where we are today for not only my daughter, but the rest of the class of 2020 and the kids coming up, because they need some help. So thank you.
Hello everyone, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Alex. A couple of really great points have been made. I would like to reinforce those points from the student perspective. Firstly, I'd like to bring up again the calculations. So for those of us who've recently taken AP Chemistry, we've learned about something called significant figures. Significant figures are the amount of figures in a decimal that you carry when you make a calculation. So if you start with a number that has one significant figure, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you go to a number that has decimal place, right now our averages, if you look, are to the 10th place. So we're going from a number with one significant figure to 2 significant figures. That's okay, that's common for a decimal. However, we then are averaging those numbers with 2 significant figures to make numbers at the bottom for our freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, and cumulative that have 3 significant figures. The issue with that is that we are changing the accuracy to which we're reporting grades all the way down the line to the bottom, which makes it really hard to tell exactly where you are. I can tell you right now, I know a lot of my friends we're all within, 5/100ths of each other for cumulative GPA, and the accuracy of reporting with significant figures, with decimal places, really affects where you end up in your class rank. We don't have a class rank, but when your GPA is reported, I just wanted to inform you of the math side of that we are reporting a 3 significant figure value from a 1 significant figure to a 2 significant figure and then to a 3 significant figure. So I just feel that we're losing a lot of accuracy in that reporting. The other point I would like to bring up, I would like to propose a solution to you for the problems that we're having. So, as was beautifully mentioned, all of the kids are going to be from 3 to 4 who graduate. Those who get below that, you got nothing. It's between 3 and 4. And whether I agree with everyone who graduates having a 3 or higher does not matter. Doesn't matter whether I agree with it or not. I would like to propose to you a way to set aside students who achieve higher. So there's nothing in the guidelines for the state that say that proficiency grading cannot have a class rank. I know we don't have a class rank. I know we haven't had a class rank for a while, but if the system were done properly, the point of proficiencies, which is to allow students more opportunities to learn, to allow them more opportunities to get to where they need to graduate, will still be in place. However, those top cohort of students who are trying to get into high-level colleges, who need to be differentiated when 100th place determines where you are in your class. Those students who take the APs, who take the honors every single year, and who might end up with a grade that's the same as someone who took none of them, it's good to have a way for those students to stand out, other than a 3 to a 4 or 100th place determines their placing. So I would like to suggest to you, considering adding a class rank with a weighted average. Now, there are endless ways you could do it to avoid hurting students, to avoid discrimination or any of those things. One way is to do multipliers. You take the grade you got in that class. If it's, say, college prep, I think that's the lowest we go. If it's college prep, you multiply that value by 1. That means it stays the same. If it's an honors course, you multiply that value by 1.1. That will do a 10% increase. Just enough to give that little extra edge to a kid who went that little extra mile. If you multiply an AP class by, say, 1.2 or 1.25, you increase it by either 20% or 25% and allow for kids to be differentiated without at all affecting how they graduate. There will be zero effect on how they graduate. It's just a way to tell students, one, where they are, clear communication, tell the student where they're at, to allow the students to be differentiated. A lot of colleges have statistics on their kids who get in, what top percentage of their class they're in. A lot of top colleges, they want to keep their statistics up. They want to see that you're in the top 5% of your class. They want to see that you're in the top 20%. If you don't have that, it can be, I'm not saying it will every time be, but it can be a disadvantage. So it is my feeling, and the feeling of a few students I've talked to, that a class rank would allow us to better differentiate ourselves, to better represent ourselves to colleges, to better know where we are. And it's also completely up to whatever group decides it. There are ways you can do it so that students don't get ranked at the bottom. You could just rank the top 25% of the class. If you ranked everyone and you only reported the top 25% of the class that was ranked, and kids were able to ask what their rank was. But they were not told, no one would get told they were at the bottom of the class. If you were allowed to ask where your rank was, you would know where you were, and that top cohort of students that want to differentiate themselves would be able to do so in an effective manner. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, my name is Mary Pickner, and I have 2 students at BFA High School, and I'm going to preface this all by, I am a huge fan of proficiency-based learning. I'm a social worker in this community, and there's very little educational content that actually teaches social work. However, the proficiencies that we learn how to get to that and understand that content are all the things that I look for in social workers and other people that I work with and champions in this community. So putting that aside, I'm going to tell that right up front. I have worked with and discussed and met with some administration since the very beginning about my concerns about the implementation of proficiency-based learning in the school district. Right from the very beginning with that first meeting as freshmen, when they said, great, we're doing proficiency-based learning, it's gonna be wonderful, and I won't take any questions. Now, the social worker in me is thinking, I have a lot more questions. When somebody says we're not taking questions, my first question is why? And so, as a social worker who works in this community, has many years experiencing with other educational institutions, I started doing some research and started asking some questions. And in this state, we've had some incredible implementation of proficiency-based learning where you spend time working with the community, discussing with parents, discussing with other community partners for 2 years to raise awareness and figure out how we're going to do this. What do parents want? What do community partners want? What do employers want? What do students want? You spend a significant amount of time doing that assessment, only to start building the capacity to do that and do that planning and implement some of that with a small cohort of teachers, figure out if that works, make some changes, do some more changes until you did the implementation school-wide. It worked out fantastic, right? Kids are getting their proficiencies mapped, their grades are done through that proficiency, so you're getting proficiencies in all of that stewardship and leadership and whether you can figure out how to write a hypothesis, and you're also getting graded or rated on your content. Many of those schools do translate them into number schools because, as one of the conversations I had, I said, how's that working at colleges? Because as somebody who does research, I went and I called 10 different colleges, got 7 responses. Some of them said, we'll look at it, we'll see. Some said, yeah, we'll figure that out. It might be like homeschooling. Do they have a portfolio? One particular college, very big college here in the state, said, I got 100,000 applications, I'm just moving on to the next one. At which I went back and said, okay, now I have concerns, right? Anybody who's saying, I'm moving on to the next one, really concerns me. So I went back and we had a conversation. I know the school went and met with, or the state met with a lot of colleges to talk about proficiency-based learning, and my next question was, my children aren't interested in going to school in this state, how is this going to translate out, right? On top of the fact that a 3 is like considered a 75, and how are they weighted, and how are you gonna get kids who are academically advanced and kids who aren't? You know, we went from a bell curve to a tsunami when you look at the and I said, you know, and if we took 5 years to do that, this wouldn't have happened, right? Other schools are implementing it. I work with all the schools in these in this county and some in another county. They took the time and they waited to the last minute. Ironically, the year when our children were freshmen that they implemented proficiency-based learning, Agency of Ed did not finalize their proficiencies until April of that school year. And so we were building the plane as we were flying, and that never works out well. And I have been asking these questions and meeting with a couple of people in administration and saying, I am concerned, this is what I'm concerned about. I do system change in this community. Can we talk about this? Can we do this? And the answer is like, yeah, it'll be fine, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. Only to get a blog last week going, turns out we made a mistake. And yet, I can't speak for other people, but I have come along year after year after year saying, I got some concerns. These are my concerns. These are the concerns that I have. This is the research that I've done. It is not coming back good, and yet I know that this has been done really well in other schools. And I am not a fan of class ranking, right? My cutoff, my birthday, was the day before the cutoff for the school year. I was the youngest kid the entire school year. I made the upper 3/4 of the class possible because I was so far behind and so lost. But when I figured out, and this is why I love proficiency, is that I would have had the opportunity to do things over and over and over again, not because I was slow, but because I was young. And so the opportunity to build on those and work on those and eventually get to those same standards is fantastic. And I look at those kinds of, as we look at his class ranking, those are the numbers that look good on paper, but it doesn't actually describe the people that are behind those numbers. And one of the things that proficiency does is that it accounts for all of those people so that we are graduating, if we did this right, students of quality, students who have incredible diversity, and people who can use those things to better those, whatever it is that they're doing. And we live in a very competitive world, particularly that, you know, higher education is expensive. And I don't care if you are doing some sort of trade school or if you are going to the top college in the country. It costs money. And the payoff at the end in salaries, it doesn't titrate out. So these kids are going to be leaving school, unless you come from incredible wealth, with incredible debt and not the salaries to match that up. And to have to be so short-sighted in implementing something which didn't have years of planning and lack of community connection, I would say borders on irresponsibility. And these children are here because they're invested in their future. You know, my child is home investing in his future because that's what he needs to do. And I'm gonna share something. I'm gonna talk about physics last year. Okay. So my son and this young lady were in a physics class, and they would do projects, whether it was a mousetrap, a car, a spaghetti bridge, and an airplane, right? And they had to calculate those things, and they had to do that. And what I loved about it was that they were building something, they were figuring out what's gonna make it better, this is gonna work, this is gonna work, and I love that. But the undertone of all of that was, I have to get a 4 because I have to get into a good college. And I remember sitting there going, this is the wrong reason to do this stuff. And so that tension and that drive to get into that good college, because there was no clarity around the way that a grade is given. If you get a 3, check, that's good enough. But you know, there's 3.1, 3.2, 3.12, and you could have had those conversations. And so one of the points that I do in every single parent-teacher conference is like, how are you grading? What is the proficiency? What happens when you do that? Is there an opportunity to go back and do more work? And I have 2 children in this school, and they each take 7 classes. And so I have, you know, anywhere from 14 to 28 different responses. Nobody does this the same. There's no standardization, there's no uniformity. No teacher knows exactly what it's supposed to be like and maybe make a couple of tweaks, but when you translate to the students, they don't know. So then you're left in panic mode of, do I have enough changes in my spaghetti bridge, and what if we do this, and we have to make more changes because I have to get a 4, when maybe we had a lot of discussion and not making those changes was a good idea, but those were never evaluated. And those kinds of details that these students need for clarity and standardization is so important. But when you start with something that doesn't have clarity, it doesn't have a clear path, and nobody really knows what's doing, by the time it gets to these kids, they don't even know what they're doing. So they give up. You know, and I live in a place and I do work, the sole purpose of my job is to create opportunities in communities for children to achieve their own greatness. And I have watched this over the years go, this is not good, this is not good. And I'm not somebody who's gonna sit by and let that happen. I'm somebody who will say something. I'm also somebody who will offer a solution every time. And every time the response that I've gotten from the administration is like, don't worry, it'll be okay. But it's never been okay, and I pointed that out. So I would, like many of these parents, I would like this to work well. And if it means going back and assessing and building community and community trust and talking to these parents, and more importantly, talking to these students, because they have the answers, right? I was that kid, youngest kid in school. I have 2 kids who are some of the youngest kids in school. They're a little lost. They're not doing the extra homework and writing the papers and making sure they have their advanced whatever classes. I would rather them not do papers over the summer and spend more time on the classics that they have to read and learn more stuff. But that's just me. What I do know is that children have the right to an education that is successful and the understanding that the good work that they do will bring them forward in a very standardized way. So thank you very much for your time.
I'll try to be brief. There really isn't a fix for my, like, you can recalculate, you can do all sorts of things with the numbers, but he, like many kids, he likes to learn for the sake of learning. And I know that a lot of educational people will say, oh, grade is the reward. He's not interested in rewards. He's interested in learning. So he almost needs the A or the B to tell him how he's doing. Like, I know you want to, like, study this, but right now you have to study this to get this. So when we went to the proficiency-based learning thing, I was like, awesome. The pressure's off, kids aren't going to be killing themselves because they don't have A's. I don't have to be one of those helicopter parents. I was so relaxed. We went to school, and we'd go to parent-teacher conferences. We'd see a bunch of 4s, a few 3s. He's doing great. He's on the, I'd even be surprised sometimes he was on the high honors. Now I understand why. So I'm like, he's on the high honors. I won't worry too much. There was never really any kind of real report card to see. And I finally learned how to get on Power School this year, and now it's something else. And I kind of prided myself, you wind them up and you don't hover over them and make them, do their homework all the time. So I thought things were fine. And then it turns out he wasn't eligible for NHS. I'm like, that's weird. How can he not be eligible for NHS? Turns out he was like, all those 3s mixed in were bringing down his grade. I didn't know he was supposed to get 4, and he didn't know. He sort of shot for the middle. So you could recalculate, but he really didn't do that great of a job because he didn't think he had to. He thought you shoot for a 3, and in the classes, physics, some of the classes that he really likes, or math, he would get 4, 4, 4 because he likes it and he's good at it. Even his tech-centered English class, he got a bunch of 4s and a bunch of 3s, and he really should have gotten, 4s. So I don't think there's any fix for this. And we're supposed to let our children fail. And I remember listening to something on VPR about letting children fail, and this man who was on there saying, yeah, I understand that, but we're talking thousands of dollars when you're talking about scholarships. So I guess my thing is, how do you get so many years, why am I finding this out now? So I sort of thought he was doing fairly well. And one of his friends, towards the end of last year, said, oh, by the way, I'm not, those study guides we used to fill out? I'm not going to do those because Mr. So-and-so said I'm getting all 3s, so I'm not even going to turn them in. This wasn't my kid, this was a friend, and I have a feeling he might have done the same thing. He gets a 5 on the AP exam, but he's got all 3s in the class, and that's basically screwing up, really, his whole college. And it is him. He did slack to some extent because he was sort of shooting for somewhere over here instead of he wasn't even shooting for the top. It's not like he got all 2s or anything. So I guess it's the rollout, and then it's sort of the mission is different, but the old paradigm is the same because it's like it doesn't matter, it's fine, and then you're like, oh, it does matter. Oh, well, I didn't know. So I think, and I really tried so hard to buy in and my husband would corner Kevin at something and complain. I'd be like, And I lecture you, oh, it's, you know, I try to give him all the reasons why it's gonna work, and I sort of feel like he's sort of, I don't know, there's no fix. There's really no way to fix it, except a couple classes he's taken at colleges and that sort of thing, but, yeah, unless, Alex, you can recalculate something. And, I think that's pretty much what I want to say, but it's sort of sad. Yeah.
And I'm mother to this amazing mathematician over there, which was a very proud moment for me. As you just heard, competition doesn't always have to be a bad thing. If you are trying to better yourself and not competing with others, if you are trying to strive for your best self, that is what we all should strive for. I love that my son runs cross country. It's an individual, but it's also a team sport. And so you see that on the field. If I told the varsity football team that there was going to be no more varsity football, that everybody who wanted to play football was going to be able to play football, I think they'd be upset. Freshman year, when we went to the proficiency meeting, I said, academics is my son's varsity sport. And you just took away the varsity team. And that was really hard for me. And so I hear a lot of really great ideas. I don't want to dwell too much on the past. I don't want to speak too much about what opportunities he's already missed, because there have been some, because I'll get very emotional about those things. I'm a physician by trade, and so I see this as an emergency. And we have to triage that emergency. We're not there yet. We don't have an accurate transcript, even though it is now, thankfully, awesome on one page. That's great. But it's not accurate. And it needs to be. I think there have been some amazing ideas that have been brought forth, both from the students and the parents. And we need some forums to be able to talk through those things. But we need them now, like right now. Because November 1st is going to be here before we know it. And that is when these kids' early action applications are due. Next week, my son is going to an interview where he has to bring his transcript. This was a rescheduled interview because we didn't have it before. I really want him to have an accurate transcript to bring to that interview, because I want them to know what a great kid he is, what you just saw. I don't think they're going to get that from this piece of paper. So I just really implore you to please, please listen to your students who are trying to get together and talk to you. Listen to your parents who have great ideas, and see if we can work through this. There's one really serious problem that I see with the transcript right now that I would love some clarification on, and that's the very first year. The first semester and the second semester are treated separately, whereas the subsequent years, the way that they're supposed to be for proficiency-based grading is that the year-end grade is your grade. That's not how it's supposed to be freshman year, and that significantly affects some people's GPA. So I think we have a lot to look at, and we have a very short amount of time to do it. And I think we owe it to these guys to really get it together in time. You have some students that are applying to schools like Cornell, Stanford, MIT. How awesome would it be to say that we had kids go from this school to those schools, and we help them to do that. Thank you.
That we keep hearing about the GPA. I just want to be really clear, we do not have a GPA. It's mislabeled on this. It's not a grade point average. That's really confusing, and I know that we've talked about this. It's really confusing to me as a parent, and I think it's going to be confusing to schools. We have a proficiency score point average. We were told really early on that we cannot equate a grade with a score, so I think that we need to be really clear. We are not talking about a grade point average, because when we hear about a grade point average, we think, oh, a 3.0, that's an average of a B. We do not have a grade point average. We have a proficiency score point average. So I just had to put that out there because I keep hearing about this GPA. The bottom line is we don't have a GPA. We have a PSPA. And that's all I'm going to say right now.
There's nothing on the transcript that actually says it's a PSPA or whatever it is. And you have your guide that says an A is equal to this, a B is equal to this, both in the profile and the next one. Nowhere does it say that. It basically just says everyone's a 3, has to graduate, they're a 3. And then they're taking the 3s or the 4s or the 3.6s and putting it into like a GPA.
Yeah.
You can, I know you can say that it's not a GPA, but you're implying it is when we're setting it to the schools. It's being implied.
Yeah, that's my concern.
It's being implied. It's
But I just want
being
to
implied.
clarify that we're talking about a proficiency score point average when we're talking about what they're graduating with, not a GPA. Is it?
Commissioner Pratt, 1 second, Mike. Can you guys talk about what the profile, what information the profile has in it?
Yes. Specific to the calculating what we're calling a GPA, it outlines exactly how that was done, that it's an average of the proficiency scores, the course level proficiency scores for each year, and then factoring in for how much credit the class was. The more credit the class is, the more it sort of counts in that overall average. And it explains that for the 2016-17 school year where we were using letter grades, in the interest of being able to have a consistent calculation, we needed to convert those letter grades to something that was on a similar scale to our proficiency scale. So I wanted to start there. That's actually the bottom right corner. It's not the start of the profile, but because that's what we were just talking about. Profile also talks about the fact that BFA is not offering a class rank, and talks about the PIN awards as a way of representing the top cohort of students. Talks about the proficiency scale and what a 3 means, that a 3 is proficient, that 4 is expanding. And it talks about our flexible pathways, different ways that students can earn credit or beat proficiencies, sort of our class schedule, and a very quick brush over of sort of our school-wide curriculum and different course levels, and a little bit about the school community. Right, colleges like to know Saint Albans is a different kind of community than Boston, and we want to highlight that. And the backside lists the courses that have an ability level, which I think, Alex, to your point, getting at that idea that not all classes are the same, even if the scores are the same. So we want to make sure colleges have that information so that they can distinguish between the classes. List the courses and the related proficiencies that are required for graduation.
And did students get the profile when they got their transcripts?
Yes.
Mike, you want to go?
Sure. I'm Mike Connor. My wife and I have been creating BFA graduates for about 14 years now. We've had 4. So I think we have a unique perspective. I've never been a fan of PBL learning. I'm more of a conservative person. If there was a sliding scale of 1 through 5 instead of 1 through 4, it would match up easily for the layperson in an A through E mindset. That's oversimplifying things. I understand the reason for proficiency-based learning and the need to encourage kids to try again until they get it right. But what I understand has happened is we've gone from a grading system of 1 through 4 to 3 to 4, a 1-point scale. So I don't think these kids, nor the parents when they were freshmen and sophomores, when they got a 3, they were high-fiving each other. I just got a B. Well, it's not a B anymore. It's meeting the proficiency for graduation, whatever that is. So the scale has changed. I look back in the BFA website, and the handbook says, vision for proficiency-based learning at BFA, we will ensure that by 2020, all students will be scored in a proficiency-based system in accordance with Vermont education quality standards. To that end, we will provide personalized learning experiences that are aligned with challenging and meaningful academic proficiencies and transferable skills. Students' progress and growth will be communicated by assessments that reflect the learning goals in every class and clearly communicate what a student knows and is able to do. All good intentions, but it anticipates factoring in meaningful academic proficiencies and transferable skills. So the problem I have with the calculations that were done is they didn't factor in the transferable skills. A student who has a 3.5 in AP Calculus is viewed the same as a student who has a 3.5 in an elective course. You're not looking at the whole individual, you're looking at the academic side only. If we are to use this system, then we should use it the way the BFA handbook outlines it, and the way Act 77 outlines it. That you factor in transferable skills as part of your calculation of someone's perceived proficiency GPA. So I appreciate the time I had with Preston and Mr. Mosca today, and we're all learning a lot in the last couple weeks and reading a lot. And unfortunately, what we feel is that the scale has been compressed to a 1-point scale. The lower level students are being brought up, and the top level students are being compressed down. So, that's.
So everyone gets a trophy. Yay.
Well, that's not life.
I think nor were the children educated in the fact that once you got a 3, that was it. Oh, you got a 3. And some teachers were like, you got a 3, there's nothing you need to do. And other teachers were like, you got a 3, but you could do these few things and work your way and get a 4. But if you didn't get the 4, instead of getting the 3, you might have gotten a 3.7, which would have been closer to a 4. So some of the students in some of the classes were like, I'm not being told I can do anything else because I have checked the box and I've moved on. And I'll have to tell you that my kids are not public school kids, and they do a lot of education that's experiential in their vacation time, and they spend a lot of time on the computer learning stuff that they're interested in. And so I struggle with personal learning plans because for my understanding what the kids are, they really get something and they are supposed to type it in or cut and paste it in, and other schools are doing fabulous work and being able to be successful with
this. Anything else, Mike?
Yeah, just our main frustration is the way in which the arbitrary retroactive averaging has occurred with our student and others. A group of select individuals arbitrarily selected some criteria retroactively looking back 2.5 years to create some sort of perceived proficiency-based GPA. That's what had to be done in order to create some sort of perceived GPA. And unfortunately, it's the world we live in. Admissions counselors are looking for that information. We want to make sure that we put our best foot forward. And we need it like next week to be good, because the deadlines are here. They have 4 criteria that admissions counselors look at. The transcripts, their essay, the Common App, and their SAT scores. So there's only 4 criteria they're looking at, and they're going to discard it, throw it in the basket, and go on to the next one if they don't like what they see. So we want to make sure it's accurate and that these kids that work their butt off are properly recognized. Thank you.
The Canadian schools too, I've heard they only look at grades, they don't really care that much about all the other stuff. It's mostly grades, and so they don't
So
understand.
they can go to Canada.
What's that?
So they can go to Canadian colleges, the kids that don't really have a clear understanding of the
No,
GPA.
they
should
can't go because Canadian colleges only care about the grades, like they don't care about much about the other tests. So I told my kid when he was about 4, I said that plenty of smart people who live under a bridge. So I mean, there's always a bridge. That's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's kind of how I feel about the situation. Okay. Yeah.
You have something else, Alex?
Yes, just one more thing. I would like to respond to the pins. So when I first had an experience with the pins, they were not calculated correctly. In any system, there are going to be flukes. I was given a silver pin instead of a gold pin. We fixed it, we got through it. I was relieved at first when I heard about the pin system because I was not being given a class rank. And I said to myself, when I go to a college interview, I'm going to do the calculation myself. I'm going to tell the counselor, my school won't give you a class rank. But I can tell you right now I have a gold pin. I know this many kids in my class got it, which means I'm in this percentage of my class. That's what I'll do. But then I learned that not only did kids not receive it who should have received it, kids received it who should not have received it. Kids got grades that were lower than they were supposed to, and they got a gold pin by a fluke, and those were not taken away. I was fine with that, because you don't want to take it, you gave it to them, taking it back could be a little demeaning. However, if we are using these pins in place of class rank, if there are even 2 more kids, the percentage goes way up for what top percent of your class you're in. So every pin that was given incorrectly is a difference in that rank that we're using if we're not trying to rank students. It's also interesting to unofficially rank them. But that if that unofficial ranking, if in place of class rank we're giving these out, and they're also being given whether you took AP, honors and all that, or regular classes, because I know kids who are in all regular classes who got gold pins. If we're going to use that, we have to be careful, and we have to be very accurate in how we use that.
Frankly, I thought we had given up on the pins because it seemed like it was with the old system. So like we never got those letters. So I figured, oh, it must be you didn't do the pins anymore. And now I'm like, oh my God, there've been pins all these years, and they're associated with scholarships, I'm assuming. And so I guess that ship sailed also. But my fault for not. I mean, here's this. I'm sorry to keep talking, but there's this proficiency handbook that I've been reading 3.5 years too late. But I'm a college graduate. I'm a fairly attentive parent, not minimally these days. But like, what if I'm like can't read or like I'm totally into like if you have grades, at least your kid knows where they are and what they're doing and how they're doing. And if they get an 89 and they want an A, they know they have to kind of work a little bit. But like. It seems like you have to be like checking in and going on Power School and looking up all these things. You're not, I don't, my kids should be really doing it on their own without me standing behind them with a whip and a chain. Like, I don't have the energy or time for that, nor should it really be the case. But I told my younger kid, I guess you gotta get fours and kiss everybody's butt, and you'll be all set. I hate to say that because I don't like that way of being, but I think that's the transferable skills, right?
I think one of the things that I think that's a major issue is the IT BFA from taking the Power School information and translating it. I have actually gone into Power School, created spreadsheets, saying how many 4s, how many credits, is it actually calculating the bronze percentage rate or the silver or the gold? Is it actually calculating the GPA correctly? I shouldn't have to create spreadsheets and hours of time validating her transcript or whether she gets a silver, gold, or a bronze. I shouldn't have to do that. But the data in Power School is not being monitored for accuracy. If you're going to implement a new proficiency-based program, you should be checking and adjusting. Are the teachers inputting the right information? Is it accurate? Does S2 equal Y1? Is everything filled in properly? The whole thing about this proficiency-based learning is there's 5 transferable skills that are supposed to be addressed and assessed. BFA is, I don't know, in the past, whatever, BFA is lucky if they're assessing 2, maybe some teachers are 3, but they're not assessing all 5, and that's what the Act 77 was supposed to be about. You're supposed to be assessing 5 proficiencies, and we're lucky if we have 2, some teachers maybe 3. But the point is that when they're transferring, first of all, the data's not accurate, but that's in there because they haven't gone in and adjusted it to what it's supposed to be, and then when it's pulling it, it's just spitting out stuff.
I think to that point.
I'm sorry, it's just.
That's the grades. Twice I had to call several times to say that my children were absent more days than there were school days. Like, you know, so I'm like, what do you mean they're absent 218 days? Twice. And so it was like, so when I think about something as simple as that, when we get to, you know, does S2 equal Y1 and how does that all work? Just, yeah, I mean, that counting days is easy. And I mean, I think anybody would say 218 days and you're gonna have 180 some odd days, like, that's a red flag for me.
Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken yet?
Yes, I'd like to just say something. I like to fancy myself as somebody being pretty agile in apps and applications such as PowerSchool and stuff, but I'll tell you, that is an application that really confused me. I had no idea what I was looking at and what data was accurate, backing up what Luna was saying.
Thank you, Ted, I feel so much better.
So I would say I would have to, outside of the grades, I don't even want to go there, I think we've gone there enough, but I would say the communication coming from the school regarding the grades, regarding the status of our child in their school year, I would say that was lacking. We were surprised with a spring parent-teachers conference and finding out that our son was behind in 4 of his classes. And not once did we get any communication from any of the teachers or from the school that he was in trouble. He was in trouble for graduating or for moving on to junior year. And so he had to do a fire drill that spring. Because there was no communication, I would go on to PowerSchool, that didn't tell me anything. And so it wasn't until we went to the parent-teacher conference and found out that he was in trouble that we were able to get things in motion. But I question, when would the fire drill be pulled, or the fire alarm be pulled on any student that's falling behind? Because not every student is self-motivated. You know, what do you do with the procrastinators? So I think that needs to be improved.
Thank you.
I'm Robert Gamash. I just kind of wanted to speak my mind. I didn't bring anything, just read off of the any facts or statistics. A little less professional than my mom, but I don't know. It seems like you guys really dropped the ball, and it's frustrating. I don't really see a reason to try anymore, like knowing that I'm gonna look the same as any other student in school, like between a 3 and a 4.0 GPA. It's just frustrating, and for that, I've gotta say I've kind of given up on the administration, faculty, I don't know, everything, and I'm not the only one.
But I won't let him give up.
That's all.
Anyone else? Chris and Preston, do you want to add anything?
I really wanted to thank people for their comments and questions and concerns. This was really important to have this kind of dialogue. I expect to have more. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I'm a parent as well. And so I'm not just a school person. And I can sense, because I have a senior in high school too. And so I know when you speak of the pressures and the stress of trying to do what's best for your child, I understand that. As I say, not just lip service or as a principal, but as a fellow traveler and trying to do what's right for your kids. And so when Robbie speaks the truth as our quarterback and a good student and a good person, that carries a lot of weight for me. I feel profoundly responsible. I will tell you there were multiple decisions made along the way, and I appreciate Liz always reminding us that this was a tough lift. If there was a crystal ball, I'd like, or not a crystal ball, but a rear view mirror, I think maybe some things would be different. I just want to give you the assurance that the decisions that were made were made with the best information we had and with the best of intention relative to what we were asked to do, how we interpreted what we were asked to do, and how we tried to execute what we were asked to do. We had a good meeting today with our department heads and some central office folks. This matter of the transcript/proficiencies, trying to design a system that fairly represents the good work of these young people, is on our front burner at all times. Your voices are not lost, your messages are heard, and I appreciate the way that you've described the problems. I appreciate the one-to-ones that we've had as well, and know that we're going to continue to do our best, and I will do everything I can personally to try to ensure your faith in what we're working to accomplish, not for just for the kids here, but for all kids in our community. I know it's said a lot, but it takes a village. We want to make sure that every student has that opportunity, and that when a student hits a 3, it really does mean something. They truly are proficient, and they hit those identifiable skills we want for everybody, because how these kids leave our school and what they bring to you as employers, and as parents, and as family members, and as community members, is vital to our overall success. So, some good things have happened. Obviously, for a lot of folks, it didn't work out the way that we had hoped or expected, and we got to be back at it tomorrow morning. So, thank you for your patience. I do appreciate it and your ideas.
So what's the next action? What's going to happen next? And what can we expect in the next week or two?
I can't speak for these good people, I can only speak for myself. I've tried to write down as best as I could many of the ideas. I have to match it up with some of the conversation we've had today. I want to set some dates for some forums. I want to make sure that our grading practices are solid by the time when the first grades are due in January, so that that's airtight. We've done a lot of verification and probably still some more to go. And then see what kind of adjustments that can be made at this stage that are fair to everyone. Some of the ideas that you've expressed are conflicting and need to sort those out to try to do what's best for all kids. So I need maybe a night to think about things and then try to get right back at it tomorrow morning. I know that Bill Kimball's worked very close with us, our new assistant superintendent has background in proficiencies. I know Preston and his team have been working very hard to meet with you and try to work through the steps. I feel I've been there every step of the way, and we will see all the ideas that have been generated, what is actionable, what we can do, what makes the most sense, trying to keep in mind everybody's interests, and go from there. I will set dates for forums, because I think that's critical to keep the lines of communication open. I don't know, Preston, you may have some thoughts about next step.
Well, I wanted to add, I'm with Chris. We go to a lot of the same meetings in terms of having those forums, making sure that our faculty are really working as a team to address the issues that have come up today, or this evening. I know that the college admissions process, I've been a school counselor for almost 20 years, is anxiety provoking always. And I totally understand, much more so for the class of 2020 at BFA and at other high schools, but I'm concerned about at BFA than ever before. And I've worked closely with the counselors, and we are committed. Part of what I've heard loud and clear tonight, and I've heard loud and clear with groups of students I've met with over the last few weeks since we gave them their transcripts, and parents that I've met with, is we want colleges to have a true and accurate and complete picture of who students are, and we want students to be able to distinguish themselves in that admissions process so that their strengths can really shine. And I love the resume and appreciate Liz bringing a sample of that today. I've written down in my notes, we have a college application event We bring any seniors who are interested together in the school library and help them get started on their college applications. We want this to be a sort of a shared experience for students, not an isolated experience, and we want them to have the support of the counselors and the expertise of the counselors. I've put in my notes, I think we need to have a resume writing workshop during enrichment similar to provide students with the support of being able to develop that. And I would ask that students and parents and counselors will be reaching out, that we really are working closely as a team with the school counselor, and the school counselor can use their letter of recommendation, can use phone calls, we'll use what we need to do to make sure that when we look at all the pieces of those applications, the transcript, the letters of recommendation, the essay, what is the story that tells about who that student is and their ability to succeed at the college that they're applying, to which they're applying. And the school counselor will use their expertise to make recommendations about what additional information we want to include, and the school counselors will take the lead in making sure that we're communicating that information to the colleges so that they have that full picture.
And hopefully they'll take into consideration people who are going for early admission first to prioritize.
Yes.
What does that plan look like between, I mean, we've heard there's a November 1st deadline. What is that plan gonna look like between today and November 1st to help those students that really need that?
We have the college application event. I don't have it, I believe it's next week on Wednesday during enrichment. Alex has the dates faster than I do, and I'm thinking not, so I feel better about that. I'd like to work with the counselors on a resume writing event the following week, and we have Stephanie Hodgman, one of our counselors, has identified a great piece of software, a website that makes that pretty easy and straightforward, and we can provide students with guidance about what is the information they want to include in their resume. It'll be a little different for every student, but again, that is thinking about what's on the transcript and what do students feel like is missing from the transcript to give that school the whole picture. So we're very aware of the November 1st deadline, and absolutely want to prioritize those students, but want to create some systematized responses for all students that will fit with that deadline.
What about after November 1st?
We don't stop doing this after November.
Well, let me rephrase that. So after that date, I mean, I know Chris, you said you had some time to think about it. I mean, we need to be very transparent, we need to be act fast.
Yeah.
We need to have a plan communicated. And how, I guess when the plan is formulated, how is that going to be communicated?
Plan in terms of the next steps for BFA about the proficiencies.
Everything.
Or the,
yeah, I mean, people are very concerned. I mean, how is this going to be explained to parents? I mean, beyond 2020, the class of 2020, the kids behind that, I mean, how is this going to be explained? I mean, I'm baffled. Still.
Can you add something around this, Bill?
I can. Just want to give a little background for myself. I'm new to the community, many of you don't know me. I've been an educator for the past 25 years, and my previous work to this was being a superintendent of schools at Washington Central. You may know it lovingly as U32, because no one knows the supervisor union, but everyone knows the school that doesn't have a name, which is what U32 is. They can never agree on one. So I kept the union number. We worked there, and it was terrific. Ma'am, I forgot your name, but you were explaining how proficiencies should be done, and the work that we did for 3 years was community-based with a student forum, and Alex, you and I are going to be talking tomorrow. You're going to be helping me.
Okay.
We had a student group and we had a parent group helping us put together the proficiency piece and also get all this out there earlier. I am right now auditing the system. Linda, when you asked what I'm sorry, it wasn't you, Linda. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. You asked Marie, you asked what the next steps were. Currently, technology-wise, I can tell you, we're bringing in PowerSchool right now to audit our entire PowerSchool IT system. It has to be done. Sarah and I have been talking about auditing all the teacher grade books on the in-service day on the 18th. We don't know if we have to do that. We need to have an evaluation by PowerSchool first to tell us if that has to be done, to make sure everything's set up correct. So I can tell you we have a plan for the IT. I also used to be a former IT director, so I've got that part, and a former physics teacher, so I'd like to talk about physics. other piece that to go with this is a, I think it was said very well at the beginning that this is a long process to get into it, and it's a long process to get. So Nina, as you asked for the other classes, what's gonna happen, we have to have a plan of communication, not only with the students, but with the parents. And it's part of where teachers in proficiency-based learning, you have to be very deliberate as a teacher to point to today's learning target is to this standard, and I'm gonna use language that's not used here in BFA and Saint Albans, because I'm used to my old language. I'm still having trouble tripping over and switching my languages, like I'm having to learn a new language, okay? Because they're and this is the problem in Vermont, we're calling the same things with different names, okay? And so that's one of the big confusions that's happening. But we have to solidify what is not just the BFA, but what's the Maple Run system? Because proficiency should not start at high school. I can't say that enough. Proficiency should not start at high school. Just like a personalized learning plan should not start at high school. It needs to start at pre-K. And so we need to align the system to do that. Right now, the short-term fixes for the seniors are ensuring that every piece of information on that transcript is accurate based on how it was done by that teacher. One of the problems I feel for the seniors is you probably were not well communicated about how your grade was determined. I'm seeing a bunch of nods, so I'm thinking that was true for those who were here in the room. I understand that. At the same time, the decision was made, and I'm not gonna go back and look at it, and this was happening in the old grading system. In the old letter grade system, teachers were allowed to determine how they determine grades. I think they were more used to how to communicate it in that system. You either knew, and we all knew it, we were all in school, it was either a point system, or some percentage system, or some weighted system, or don't give that teacher because we don't know how they do it. Right? I mean, that's kind of how it worked, at least when I was in school in the late 70s and early 80s. So we have to do a better job of communicating that. I wish I had a way to go back and do that for this senior class. So I don't have an answer for that. It doesn't mean we won't find one. That's one of the reasons I want you to help me bring students together to have this discussion.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I've got all the solutions and I know how to do it, but I know we all do together. And that's what I said to the department heads today, because we've been working with the department heads on this issue for the past 2 weeks. And I say, need all of you at almost every week in a meeting, because more heads around the table will make a better plan. So Nina, when you ask for the detailed plan, I can only tell you what I know right now. Because I've got to assess the situation. That's what I've been doing for the past 2 weeks, is assessing where are we with proficiencies. I agree with almost everything that was said in this room. And that's where we are. So it would be poor of me to tell you that I have a better plan than I do right now. I can tell you that plan's going to have lots of communication in it and lots of solving this together.
There's one commonality that was spoke about too. I mean, I know the parents concerned, students concerned, but teachers too.
Yeah.
It just seemed like a lot of it, the teachers were not on the same page and how to express how their kid is doing or how they're being graded. So in addition to the teacher, the parent, the student and the parent, teachers too, have a group of teachers too to see their input too.
And
I mean, just the confusion, I mean, from you ask the same question, you get 10 different answers.
But that's because there was never anything clear at the top. So I mean, if we take this to a fundamental education level, you get a project, you have a rubric. In order for me to get a 4, I have to do this. In order for me to get a 3, I have to do this. But there's no rubric to this whole proficiency-based grading project that we have going on here. So it was never clear.
I just don't know that because I've been trying to understand the system and there are lots of documents. Believe me, Sarah and I have been going through. In a week and a half, we've been going through a lot of review what's not there. I can't confirm or deny what you just said because I don't know. But that's the auditing of the system that was asked for. And that's what Kevin assigned me a week and a half ago. He said, Bill, I need you up there to go through the system and help with it.
So there's an award ceremony tomorrow night at school. It sounds like that probably shouldn't happen, and that should really be, postponed and reevaluated before that happens. If people are still currently saying that there are inaccurate grades on their transcripts, then it doesn't really seem to make sense to me to have an award ceremony tomorrow night when you don't have a clear understanding as to what people's grades are and then their color pins that they should be getting.
It's a lack of credibility.
Agree 100%,
but it's been there for a
yes.
while. So, I mean, and these students will tell you, like, this is a joke, I don't really know, I'll do that, or I can just make this up. And, I mean, I'm like, you guys are pretty smart and savvy, you know, this group here, but many students are. And I'm like, here's your answer. I'm like, you've already figured stuff out, I know you have.
I already have figured it out.
We have, well, I'm like,
We're
this
all
is
in.
dumb, why are you doing this?
So I don't know why we're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to 1,400 school board meetings. I'm certainly glad I retired as a superintendent 4 years ago before this. But I'm angry, not angry at anybody here. I want to commend the speakers for how calmly you delivered your concerns. I've been to board meetings where people were throwing chairs. This is probably the most important issue of all 1,400 board meetings that I've been to, and you weren't throwing chairs. I also sense that the school is really working hard to do their best to straighten this out. What I'm angry about, the people that we should be really throwing chairs at, it relates to unfunded mandates. We had a mandate to do this proficiency-based learning, which I believe in. I want kids to be proficient. But I also want our staff in our school to have the funding, the training, and not to be forced to do something so quickly that it causes this confusion. So I am angry at this. And I hope, I have a granddaughter in the 2nd grade, so I hope in the next 10 years we figure this out. And I'm sure we will, I'm being facetious with that. But I feel for the parents and the kids, and not kids, but students and young men and young ladies. And I want you to know, the board members, we're not in the weeds. We don't do the grading and we don't see. So at the last board meeting was the first time I heard there was this concern. And I got a call from a legislator, who I'm kind of close to, voicing some concern. So I want to say as a board member, I'm very concerned, but I'm very respectful and thankful of what a great community we have and how kind and decent you people are. And I know that we could get mad at each other and point fingers. What we need to do is roll up our sleeves and figure this out. And for the kids that need to, I keep saying kids, for the young people that need to do their November 1st applications and so forth, you know, we need to put this ASAP. So I commend all of you, and let's work together to solve this problem.
Having been in the trenches for about 29 years, under 2 systems, one the ABC system and one proficiency system, because at the tech center, each of us had to design our programs with the proficiencies and had to label it 1, 2, 3, or 4. And your observation is 100% correct, because we knew that funding was attached to it. I think so when the state puts out a mandate, and then if you have a student who only gets a 2, there's somebody there to say, how come the student only got a 2? And so you work with that student to make sure they get it up to a 3. So I understand that. So there is probably a simple solution to the whole problem, but the simple solution is a complicated one. So I think that Preston has the fortitude to get going on this and make the proper changes so that our students have the grading system that the colleges will accept, and that all the information is there, and I'm sure that that will happen. I also want to commend our young people for being here and supporting this, even though your parents may have told you to come. But that's important, and for the students that have interjected, you've done well. So,
Thanks, Al.
I want to thank everybody.
I have homework, it's like, you know, when you go up, there's what, 15 families here? I don't know, maybe give or take. And these are folks who have been alerted to, oh, something's wrong, taken the time to research it, investigate it, and then talk to other parents that they're connected to and say, yeah, this really is a bigger issue. There are, I don't know, maybe another 150 families that should also have the opportunity to be involved. And I guess one of the things that I would like to put forth is like, could we make that happen? And that opportunity is, whether it's a personal invitation or something, but you know, this is one slice of our graduating class. There's a whole pie that's still out there. And I'll tell you, reading this, and I think I can speak for everybody, this is not easy stuff to understand. So, I mean, you have to learn what this is, but then you have to get a whole other education to figure out what this proficiency stuff is to begin with, so.
I can attest to that. I'm not a bright person, but I have surround myself with really bright women like Liz and Julie and Mary, and they couldn't even help me with this. I don't know. What I worry about, and maybe I shouldn't be any of my concern, my my youngest is a senior and he's out of here hopefully, God willing. But what is this going to do about all those rural areas that get to choose the high school that they could attend? Before, in the past, people were wanting to come to BFA because of academic excellence and the sport program and all that we have to offer. But aren't we going to lose a lot of funding if kids aren't going to want to come to BFA anymore? I mean, I don't know if it's my concern or not. Like I said, I'm out of the school system in a couple, 9 months, hopefully. Hopefully. But and the other big concern I have is that, again, there's that other piece of pie that's not here represented that, like, is this a legal issue? Can we get a class action lawsuit against BFA or this? I'm just talking about, you know, stuff that I've heard. You know, I have my ear to the ground. Anyway, just throwing that out there, those are my concerns.
I mean, and I can't speak for everybody, there's a lot of stuff around scholarships and awards and grants that are at stake here. You know, I've been a social worker for 30 years. I have not made a lot of money. And I've done that on purpose because I believe in changing our community. But I was also banking on my child's ability to do well and have it demonstrated accurately so that those opportunities are there. I don't think that's there. And so I have to have these hard conversations and say, you know what, we have a 20-year gap in the trades. I'm thinking if you're an electrician for 5 or 6 years, you can write your own ticket. But that's not what I want for my child who wants to be in a school to study, I don't know, biochemistry. That's what his goal is, right? So, I mean, I'm not saying I think I would be an electrician, but those kinds of things are like, those are not hard questions that they should have to decide because this isn't clear or hasn't been clear.
Thank you.
So I just would like to request that the board has more information about this as we move forward. Years ago, when I was on the BFA board prior to this board forming, we had committees, and I love committees because we got to know things in more details. And I wish we could revert to that system again so we could be more involved and have detailed information. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Thank you.
I just want to echo a couple things. I said earlier, we've had 4 kids go through the school. There's a lot of dedicated teachers and staff that need to be recognized. And I think they're put in a tough situation trying to manage something like this, as Al alluded to. So it's hard for them as well. I think we all recognize everybody's trying to roll in the same direction. question we have is, there are those issues that are non-emergent, and there are those issues that are emergent for these seniors that need to apply for schools in the next week or two. So what are we going to do to roll up our sleeves, and when can we expect feedback on proper recognition for these kids in the transcripts? And how do you achieve that fairly for all? I know you probably can't answer that right now, but when can we expect positive feedback as to where we move forward from here, and what the timing would be so these kids can plan on when they can send their apps out? Please.
Any other board member comments or questions?
It's more just like Sally asked for information. I did bring some couple articles he's trying to hand around relative to the matter. One is about redos and retakes, and the other is about efficiencies around the state. So I just want to make sure people have that information. It always is good to have something to read about the state.
Can I just say one quick thing too? I remember being in high school and trying to get good grades and not getting great grades, but I remember kind of being jealous of these kids who were like, all I need to do is pass. I just need a 60. And I remember thinking, oh my God, all they have to do is get a 60 and they get out of school. Now I know that's not what we're doing here, but it kind of feels, I think it feels that way to some students. Like, all I gotta do is get a 3. And I think it's communicated by some of the, not all, but some of the staff that is the case. And I'm not saying you're dumbing it down at all, it may sound that way, but when you roll it out to the new students, I think they read it that way. Especially somebody like me who's taking this really as possible.
So I just want to be, so like Preston and Chris, I'm just asking specifically, when is the next transcript going to be produced that's accurate with all the things that have been identified? I mean, that's what we're really asking here. And like, we've been asking this now since before school started, and now we're October 2nd. So I just really think we need to know, when is it going to be available? Like, what's the next checkpoint? Who's going to checkpoint it? Who's looking at it? When can we expect that? I mean, I'm unfortunately where we are, but I'm thinking like, you're gonna put 100 people on this to fix it, or 200 people, or whatever it takes, so that it's fixed tomorrow, or the next day at the latest. I mean, I just.
I think having that accurate transcript needs to happen before October 31st, because there are a whole lot of moving parts that go into that application and all the other stuff that's overwhelming. But having that accurate transcript will help these guys go, okay, this is one point, and I can build on all of that. So having it sooner rather than later will be way more beneficial.
I'm just going to say, first as a parent who has a senior in high school, I've met with, many of you, actually all of you as a parent now, and I think it can't happen on October 31st.
No.
It has to happen way before that.
Yes.
And it has to be accurate. And again, I'm also going to say, we've had these discussions. It makes me upset that I have to go back and scrutinize Sarah's transcripts once again to make sure they're accurate. Because I've been working on this with you guys for a long time now. And I think the other part that has been alluded to by you, Mary, is the whole equity piece. Like, what about, like, I'm not and I know that Mrs. Kelly Hurst probably thinks that I'm one of those hovering parents, but I just barely figured out how to get on Power School, and I don't feel like it's my responsibility to be hovering over Sarah's grades, whatever she gets. Have I pushed her? Have I said a 3 isn't good enough? You bet I have, because what I know is it's between a 3 and a 4. And then we get to that whole other piece. What about equity? What about the whole point of X? Because the school district being merged was equity. And what about all those kids who don't have parents that are engaged? And I mean, that's the other piece that we need to pick. Now, that's not the important thing. We need to get transcripts done first, because my senior, like all of these other guys, are on a deadline that, we missed that line quite a few months ago.
I would actually argue that it's not important, because if most people are getting a 3.0, that would put a lot more people eligible to go to college. So does that mean that the guidance counselors are meeting with all of the seniors and making sure that they're applying to schools and helping them, write resumes and write cover letters for schools and learning how to, making sure that they're able and understanding as to how to access applications and then FAFSA and all of that? Because I would think that your caseload must have quadrupled if most kids are between a 3 and a 4 at this point.
Yeah, but as Susan said, that's a PS proficiency score, it's not a GPA. And the ones I looked at, the colleges I've talked to over the summer, they're like, guidance has to figure this out. Like, and somebody else pointed out, UVM is not gonna like scrutinize every little piece of paper. It's like, you met this, and this, okay, we'll look at you. But, if they don't have all those pieces above the line, then they're gonna be passed over.
But we do need an accurate transcript.
Yes.
That's like one of the starting points.
And your GPA, not PS, whatever.
Yeah, my point is valid. I'm sorry that you don't think it is, but it actually is valid. And it would mean that you would have a lot more college-bound students. And is the equity there? Are the supports in place for them? Are their parents being contacted, and are you having those meetings, and is that happening? I mean, it says here that, what did I read? That not 60%, I'm sorry, hold on, just give me one moment, please. About how many kids were first year, it must be our school. Okay, nearly 2/3 of BFA students are first generation, neither parent graduated from a 4-year college. That means 2/3 of our school, of our kids should be receiving services from VSAC. Are they? I would wonder. Because they all should, every single one of them, if they don't. So that's an equity issue right there.
If I could, I'm sorry, Randall, do you feel you have the resources available to address the concerns that have been brought up tonight? And if not, is there a way we can make that happen?
Yes, I feel like in terms of the work of the school counselors, I believe we have the resources to do that.
In the time frame they're hoping for.
In the time frame we're hoping for. There are other layers that aren't functions of the school counseling office that I can't speak solely to all the resources. That's really about school resources.
Okay.
So
Chris, do you feel you have enough resources to make this work? Or is there more we can?
It's a great question. So I do appreciate Bill Kimball's involvement, and he's been able to provide us some, I think, personal knowledge relative to his journey, and also being a good conduit to central office so that we can get what we need, if it's more hours for people or different ways of utilizing the technology, et cetera, to make sure that things are accurate. So I think we're okay right now. It will be our primary focus, as I've said, and we really do hear the message.
So, I guess one of the things I think about that in having these conversations over the last 3 years is that the one thing I've heard is that, we are trying to solve the problem with the same kind of thinking that got us there. Whatever that Einstein thing said, is that we're doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And, the talent that is in that guidance office is incredible. And they lost, a guidance counselor last year. I don't know if that's going to make a difference either way, but I think if you have community help, that will help you get that, because you need new ideas to make this work. And this institution has been working on this for years, and here we are.
I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. It's really helpful to hear from you directly, so thank you. And it's obvious that we need to work on our communication, and we'll try to do better.
So, can you get back to, will there be an email that goes out to all the parents? What is the means of the next communication? Or should we be on the phone every day and making appointments to try and make sure that there's resolution in the next week or two?
You should see an update by Friday. I'll guarantee you you'll have a letter from Chris Moscow.
Okay, thank you.
Just as you did last Friday, that was one that we said we had to get out.
Okay.
So,
So, a letter in the mail, I'm sorry.
no, we do it through our rapid communication system, so they get an email, it goes right to parents, just as we did last week.
And that was specific to the transcripts, right?
Right, and so, just as we've been doing it, as we did last week, we'll get you a Friday summary.
Could I request the board get that letter too?
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, we lost Sally, but I think I'd like to get going anyway.
I think she just went to the ladies' room.
Item 6B. Item 6B is negotiation teams. So it's time for us to enter into negotiations with both our professional staff and our support staff. So I know that Nilda is interested, Jack is interested, Al is interested. So my initial thought was 3 people on each team. I was thinking me and Nilda on the professional staff, Jack and Al for the support staff, and then I'd like to have 2 more people if people are interested.
For which one?
I need one for
Professional
professional and one
each.
for support staff.
Professional, one for support.
The process is the same, it's, you know,
How long is this professional?
okay? Okay? Is that okay, everybody?
Unless you want to. Does anybody else?
Unless anyone can afford that person sitting.
We could, yeah.
I'll at least sit and so.
Okay, so we have me, Nilda, Nina, Jack, Al, and Alicia. Let's do a poker head. And that's all we need at this point. I would like to, Mike, actually, we don't know what nights the support team might want, right?
Right, but I think, we talked about Mondays and Wednesdays being better nights.
Right.
Or at least.
So we should do that for all of them, if we can.
So I mean, maybe one gets Monday and the next time they get Wednesday, or they get, you know, I don't know.
That's right, I remember the reason too.
Yeah,
So
that happens,
you can-
helpful,
you can
that's
blame
too
it on
much.
me. So we're gonna try to meet on Mondays and Wednesdays, so I would love to know from you guys before we meet tonight, if there's any Mondays and Wednesdays, you know, that are definitely out. We're gonna be trying to plan 3 or 4 meetings, I think, you know, because there'll be some meetings where we're not negotiating, it's just preparation work. And then we'd like to get ground rules meeting, which is quick, and then probably 2 real meetings before the end of the year. Okay? Anybody, Bill, do you need to add anything?
No, I think you got it, I mean, Mike, do you have anything you want to add? No, I think that,
You're looking forward to it?
I've been working at the state level in the Vermont State Health Contract, and you wouldn't believe how much I'm looking forward to working with you.
I'm pretty sure we'll get a little further.
Yeah, I think we'll have a much more productive time.
It'll be a step up.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I have promoted what has happened here in the last 3 years, time and time again, as a model of a middle-sized district and how it can work. And I've just been frustrated with them not receiving some of that information. You know, receiving in the effort to this thing. We have a good model here that worked, and so I've been trying to sell. But I am, and we are, as a team, definitely looking forward to sitting down and doing what we can before that comes out.
Good.
I just wanted to apologize for not participating, because when I did do it, I enjoyed it. But I can't see to drive at night, and someone would have to bring me up Fairfield Hill and up my 1,200-foot driveway that is pretty bad in the winter.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, it's a long walk too.
So, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Sally. Okay, on to new business, item 7A. Just an FYI.
Yes, just an FYI, and we alluded to this at a meeting earlier, that when we hired Alexis, we hired her under the title of Director of Behavioral Support and Student Engagement.
Should have continued on the next placard.
Yes, and as we noticed over and over again, as we did business cards and plates and everything else, and letterhead, and try and remember that name, it never worked out very well. People were doing, oh, that's a support gal. So we talked, and Alexis came up with the idea that really, if we say student support director, it's encompassing everything we talked about relative to engagement and everything else. And it fits in our business. So.
Brenda actually came up with it. I'll give credit where credit is due.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Brenda. So that's, I don't know, do we have that on your, there we go.
All right. I'm in favor.
Guess we gotta be since you made the name.
I didn't make it.
The way things go.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Item 7B, early retirement applicants.
So as many of you are aware, in your teacher's contract, there's a provision for early retirement and to apply for support from the district for early retirement. If we have less than 8 applicants, there doesn't need to be a lottery. If there is more than 8 or less, thank you, Joe. If there's more than 8, then the board can do 2 things. They can tell somebody we need to go to a lottery or approve, expand it beyond the 8. And I believe, and Kevin, tell me if I'm wrong, but that's happened in years past.
Well,
It's been expanded.
slight inaccuracy.
Okay.
We have never reached the 8, so there's never been a lottery.
Never ate at once.
Right. But what has happened in earlier years is that there's some people that either did not have the 20-year criteria or did not ask for it by October 1st, which is the deadline. And they put in a request. And often the board, after looking at all the permutations and commutations around on this as far as if they'd save money or if it was best, often did vote to allow them to go through with retirement. So in this case, it is slightly different this time. We actually have 11?
We got 12.
12.
Another one just came in.
Okay.
And sorry, I didn't get you updated on that. But Martha ran some financial information. As you may be aware of, in the contract, it's a $12,000 one-time payment for early retirement. As we look at all of 11, I only have statistics on 11, I don't have 12, but it should run about the same. We compare to someone that comes in with about a master's level education with about 10 years of experience, if that were to be replaced. The thing that's a wild card right here is the health benefits and the cost, because as you know, from a single plan to a family plan, there's $11,000 difference. But we feel pretty confident about that. When we look at the overall cost for those 11 folks, if we did for the first year, there might be a little bit more expensive, including that $12,000 payout. It's about $30,000 more. Replacing it with someone with a master's level education, 10 years of experience, that's pretty high. As soon as we go down to a master's level education, 5 years experience, it's a savings of about $70,000. So, you know, it's a real kind of sliding scale. I can't predict exactly, but I want to kind of give you the range. Overall, in the second year, it's going to be a financial benefit. So, I just want to give you the information as a board about it. I think overall it's good for the district, not just only to support folks and that have worked here a long time and make a run, but also to, I think we'll be doing that with people that will come in. So we won't have everyone at that same level. I'm doing the law of averages here. And Martha's doing the law of averages, but she did it for me. But she did a great job.
And, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, what are you looking for from us?
Well, we're, first off, I would just get that one out of my head now.
Lottery or no lottery, whether or not to put everybody
So
there.
what we're actually looking for is, do we go with just 8, therefore we do a lottery on those 8? Or do we decide there are 12 people here, we look like we'll break even maybe, or a little bit in either direction, and second year you make some money if you're looking at it from a financial point of view. So do you take all 12 or do you sit with 8?
Those are only choices, right? In other words, it sounds like, strictly speaking, you had to have 20 years, but you can make exceptions.
But all of those
They all
who
have
came
to,
in,
if not
all of
more.
those who came in are 20 years.
Oh, I'm sorry, some of them are less.
10 of them have 10.
10.
10 of them have 20 years. There are 2 that have
So
less.
what I would say to that, Steve, is what you've done in the past, if you decided, we respect what you guys, what you're wanting, we'd like to allow you to go if you want, is you did a kind of a per diem. So it was 10 years versus 12, it would be 5, 6, and $12,000.
We've done that.
We did that.
And we did that calculation.
So I'm looking for the direction.
And so the 2 people that are below 20, what?
The calculation was that, I believe one of them was at 19 years. So, I mean, it's like just under, and the
Yeah.
other one I think was 18 years. So it's like, they're right on the cusp. And so they wouldn't receive the full 12,000, they would receive 11,800 or 10,400, whatever the FTE.
So I would just I'm in favor of doing all of them. What's the will of the board?
I am too, as long as everybody's in good standing and, I mean,
I guess I'm not. This is taxpayer money, and I'm very aware of that for that reason.
Al?
Well, I think we ought to have a motion on the floor if we're going to discuss things. So I move that we approve all the requests this year.
Thank you, Al. Could I get a second, please?
I'll second that.
Thanks, Jack. Okay, discussion. Do you have any discussion, Al?
Well, I think, right, there are times when we haven't done anything. The fact that we're going over, I think the end result gives an opportunity for younger teachers to come in. So I'm in favor of approving all of them.
Anybody else, any other discussion?
Yeah. Sorry, I just want to hear from Sally.
Oh, I just would be, in favor of keeping it to the 8 or having a lottery, because it's taxpayer money. I really think we need to be more aware of the fact that it doesn't sound like a lot of money, that's a wonderful gesture, but it is taxpayer money, and life is tight for a lot of the taxpayers. I never forget that. It doesn't drive what I'm doing, but
I think the question always is, Sally, what would those teachers do if they didn't get this benefit? So if they worked, then it would be more money for the taxpayers.
I've been on the school board long enough to get that.
Yeah.
But I still think that they would probably retire.
Yeah, I think it's hard to tell.
I think for me, another thing to always remember is that people who have been working in education for 20 and 30 years started off making $15,000 a year, whereas an incoming teacher now starts off making $43,000 a year. So when I'm looking at some people who are retiring in education that might be so like maybe they don't have a partner, looking at what their retirement's going to be, I think that many of these people are going to be retiring at making between $50,000 and $65,000, and they've been working their buns off for 30 plus years, and so It's just, that's what, I'm just sharing my opinion, that's all.
No, and I can't deny that those are certainly valid comments. I worked for SRS, for the state, and I also taught school in Baltimore, and I was making $3,000 a month, but that was a very long time ago. Really shouldn't even bring it up, but I know that the state doesn't reward retirees, and so I suppose that influences my decision. But I'm just one person, so
Yeah, no, I think it's a valid point, it's always important to weigh them.
Can I hear one more time, like the expected savings, or the net gain?
So for the first year, because of the $12,000 pay, I think we're, as Kevin said, we're gonna be somewhere break even, lose a little bit, gain a little bit, because we just can't predict what we're gonna hire back.
Or who's going to, what health insurance?
What health insurance? That's the biggest swing, the biggest unknown here is the health plans, frankly. The salaries are easy to figure out, it's the health.
So could you enlighten us on whether or not the people that are here are people that are individual healthcare
I can tell
receivers
you
or family?
all about what they are, but I can't tell you what they are individually, because that'd be violating HIPAA.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just looking for family or individual, I'm sorry.
So I can tell you that.
Yes, overall would be great. Thank you.
Overall, they average about a 2-person.
Okay.
and I would say I know a lot of those people, and they're wonderful teachers. So I hate to see them go, but.
If I could, the question I asked about whether these are our only two options is,
Call the question.
One second now, let me
Oh, I'm
finish
sorry.
this comment.
that if we decided just to give 8, does it have to be a lottery? Because it seems to me there are others who put in 30 or more years that I might rather see. Nothing against someone who only works from 19 to 20, but.
Your master agreement calls for the lottery.
So it's.
The second year, there's much more savings because you're not getting
Yeah.
paid.
Oh, exactly.
So I understand what Sally is saying, but for the sake of the taxpayer, the second year, there's a big savings. And most of the time, in my experience, when you hire new people, they tend to take the single. There are some that are gonna take the family and the 2-person and all that. But newer teachers tend to, there are more single person. That in the second or third year after they meet somebody, get married, and you've got the 2-person and then the family. But, so it is kind of a lottery system. It's kind of a gamble, is what I meant to say. But in the second year, you definitely save money. So for the taxpayers, I'm for all 12 myself.
Are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of granting early retirement to all 12 applicants, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So the ayes have it, 7-1. Thank you.
I did not this no.
Okay, item 7C
I
is
don't-
probably,
I feel bad for special education though. Because you're gonna have to hire 1, 2, 3, 4 more special educators next year. And there's none to be had.
You think we can get it for right on those?
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard to find special educators.
item 7C is the VSBA annual meeting where if one of us is going, they can vote for us. I believe the only resolution that I've seen is about rearranging the regions that make up the VSBA. And I was wondering if you were going, Jack.
I like to go.
So if you were going, I would ask you if you'd be willing to vote for us.
Yeah.
Then you can keep us company then.
Sure. Yeah. But that's all it is. I believe that's the only resolution that I've seen is the rearranging of the VSBA regions acceptable to people. I think they're going to put us with Grand Isle, I think Franklin County and Grand Isle. I mean, that's the only change that matters.
This is the way they're pouring.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jen.
So let's, just for the record, let's get a motion to appoint Jack as our delegate to the VSBA annual meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Al. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 8-0. Thank you, Jack. Item 8A, warrants.
I move that we approve the warrants as printed.
Second that. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Mrs. Ashworth.
You're the first person I've looked at.
I know you are. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I would like to,
Opposed?
I would like to sign them first because it's my anniversary and
Oh, can I give it to Jack first and then I'll give it right back to you?
Ayes have it, 8-0.
Happy anniversary.
only 37 years.
Only.
You started.
That's what you're going to say.
Okay, item 8B, superintendent's report.
Just a few things today, folks. First off, those of you may or may not know, but I'm just really happy to see this. One of our own on the board, Alicia, has joined Rotary here in town, and I love to see that. I'm a Rotarian. Bill's been coming some, and I just think Rotary is a very good volunteer organization. There's an awful lot in the community, and it's great networking, and it's nice to have somebody. Yeah.
It's mostly 50.
It's what?
Mostly 50.
What I think they'd love to have. And it's Tuesday, it's typically they meet Tuesday from 12 to 1. It's lunch with a presentation, and you're out of there at 1, just about perfect time. So, but anyway, just want to thank Alicia for that, because although she's generally representing the hospital, these mostly professional people who represent certain organizations, she's also representing us. The other thing is, you're probably wondering why I have a helmet here in front of me.
No one noticed.
So, some people thought it was for protection for me from insults from the board chair, but it hasn't worked. But what it is, we received this a couple weeks ago from the group of people who worked on the snack bar. Although we don't want to call it a snack bar, right?
The pavilion.
Pavilion. So the pavilion, which is large enough to probably rent apartments in, it's wonderful up there. And they gave to the major donors a football helmet. And on the football helmet, it reads, Saint Albans Football wants to thank you for your generous donation to our football community. Obviously, it's larger than the football community. It was nice to be part of it, and at that celebration, there was an awful lot of accolades for the people on board for their assistance in this. Just for you to know, the whole thing came to about, Martha will probably help me with this because I think she just gets some numbers, but I think it was around 270,000
Yes, not ballpark.
for the whole part. Much of that was covered by volunteer work, including Mike over here did an awful lot of the work for us for free. A lot of materials were covered, a lot of the electricity and the water were covered. But, so that 270,000 wasn't all in, they had to pay out, a bunch of it was in kind. And they took we offered the 90,000 through our capital funds. I think it was a great use of money. People were enjoying it, and it's used a lot.
I was just curious, Tim, have the bathrooms been open outside of games?
Yes, we open one for the day, close
Okay.
at night.
Not today.
It was open today?
I walked every day.
That's
right.
Well,
It's at 10:30.
yeah.
It will be open.
That's all we need to. But going forward, is that the intention, is that it will be open?
One bathroom should be open. We're going to open in the morning and at dusk we'll close.
Thank you.
I'll apologize. The guys are trying to get fields down for the Special Olympics this weekend, and I think they might have not gone over there.
It wasn't an emergency.
You made it to the building?
And the only other thing I have is I urge you to read the newsletter. Again, I thank Dino Batsaris for working on it. He does a really nice job getting information from the schools, from the district, and really shows off some nice things that we're doing.
Good. Thank you. Any questions for Kevin? Bill?
Yeah, actually I do.
Oh, okay.
So knowing that all this is happening, I guess I'm uncomfortable with it all being put on one person's shoulders. We just had a lot of people from the community here, and I don't feel as though any of your monthly reports has informed us about anything that has been going on about proficiency-based grading and the issues that are going on with transcripts and kids. And so I'm just confused by why there hasn't been information about that.
You've had all the information that I've had up till a couple of weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
So nobody's come to you, nobody from the community has come to you?
I started getting it about 3 weeks or a month ago, and we were right on top of that. So,
And you didn't find it important to put information in your newsletter about what's going on with all of that?
we could do that actually, but we knew that would be happening through the blog that Jeff does about each one of these meetings, and we knew that tonight we would be talking about it. We would probably put it on the agenda. We could add it to that too.
Well, I guess I'm just feeling like that you would also be providing, right, because it's our job to have accountability, right, to support accountability to make sure that the things that are getting done are supposed to be getting done, that we're not supposed to be micromanaging. But if we don't know about those things, and if you're not aware of those things, I'm just trying to understand where does the accountability lie?
The accountability, just like the whole micromanaging works all the way up and down the system. So I don't micromanage the buildings, the superintendent does. I've worked it pretty much the same way that the board works with me, is that we expect the buildings to run. We're told, we ask the questions, we expect those things to happen. When they don't, then we have to deal with them.
I guess I'm looking at this as a whole supervisory union, I'm probably not, I'm sorry for not using the proper consolidated union issue. And because all of our feeder schools are going to the high school, and because we've talked about what a heavy lift this is, I don't know that it belongs just on the shoulders of the guidance departments and the principal of the high school. And I would expect more involvement, actually.
Well, we certainly have involved Bill and other people from the central office.
Bill now, yes, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience. That's probably been a little late. It has been a little late, right?
And I'm gonna say I feel like I brought these concerns consistently to the guidance department and Mr. Mosca. Certainly reflecting back on it, and I feel like I really went all the way up through. I feel like in many ways I was extra careful in terms of going through the right channels, separation of me being a parent and a board member. And quite honestly, I am disappointed, and I said this to the two of you when I met with you on the Friday the 13th. I really am disappointed that I didn't bring it sooner, quite honestly, because I feel like maybe this would have been in gear sooner. And that's, you know, so, you know, I'm learning, and it is obviously a really emotional issue for me because I've got a senior in high school who I'm really, really concerned about still.
When you say sooner, how much sooner?
Well, I feel like, you know, certainly we met at the end of the year. Preston and Mr. Randall and Ms. Costa met on the last day of school. And, you know, I don't know if I should have brought it forward, you know, sometime in
on your shoulders, why not?
No, but still.
It's educating, you know, other parents, they said, you know, 150 for the seniors. But what about, you know, this class is coming after that, like, how can we help? I mean, we can't put it all on, you know.
No, well, I think we went over this earlier, and obviously there needs to be lots of communication and lots of education, and, you know, we need to start working on the junior class, you know, this month, you know, because in the blink of an eye, they're gonna be looking for their applications the same way that seniors were looking for information to start putting their applications in over the summer, and they didn't have it. Anyways.
Yeah, and even if we're not talking about the triage work that needs to be done for the now, I'm hoping to see more information about the work that needs to be done for next year's seniors and the following year's seniors also in here, because I don't think it's one person's job or one department's job. I think it's our supervisory union's job. And I, you know, just speaking to Sean even, you know, about what does that look like in the K through 8 school, because there's definitely been conversations around, you know, we're not looking at 4s, we're looking at 3s, we're looking for all of our kids to be proficient, and that's awesome. And I'm also a social worker, and I'm also not somebody that feels I have to have my kid have, you know, all 4s and everything. But if later on, you know, that's going to come back to bite us in certain areas, then we need to have a very clear idea, Bill, and that's what I meant about the rubric, right? We all have to be under the same impression of what that end goal is. So then we can all work towards that with informed, being super informed.
And if I can interrupt, when you said that earlier, I was like, yes, that's what this system is about, because when you had A's, B's, and C's, there was no rule or communication between department members about what a C meant or what a B meant. It was kind of up to each individual teacher.
Absolutely.
So different ones had different. Now, there is supposed to be a rubric about what a 3 means.
There is.
And what, so that's going to help.
Absolutely, but it hasn't translated.
Yeah.
And so that's the work that still needs to be done, which is fine. I mean, we're right, we all have to have a growth mindset. There's still work that needs to be done. We're not there yet. But I don't see that reflected. And I think that that's something, when you talk about, well, I don't know what our goals are going to be for a school board. Well, clearly, we have a really big goal that we all need to be working on. School board members, administrators, department heads.
Valid point.
So,
is there a place for reaching out to other school districts that have your ear to the ground? Any other schools having issues with this in a big way, or is anyone get right that you're aware of that we could reach out to?
It's mixed.
It's mixed.
It's everything from they haven't gotten there yet to the same sort of issues that are happening here. To some, they're actually doing a lot like us, better, and it's been fairly specific.
And then I would add that there's even more further out. There's a scheme of a range of how you want to do this and how you report, because some districts are going to a fully draftable report. I'm not advocating, so I mean, no text on how you're doing it.
Right. Oh yeah.
So,
Well,
so
during the elementary
it's,
schools we do that.
So there's a wide gamut. I just want you to understand that. And from my knowledge of what most high schools are doing in Vermont, we're pretty close to middle of the road.
We just didn't know if we need to reinvent the wheel by ourselves or whether.
No.
There are groups doing this.
People's Academy, I mean, there's plenty of schools out there that have got it. We'll slow down. Sorry.
No,
I just wanted to say again that we really need more information. We only get what information is presented to us here, because we don't have committees anymore who are in the schools and working with specific areas. When I was on the BFA board previously, we knew everything that was going on. Now, there are 3 more schools, it's a different situation, but we are dependent on the administration to supply us with that information. And
in order to be able to help with accountability.
Right.
How can we help with accountability if we don't have the information?
It's a management style that we're using that I think is where the fault is. To be perfectly honest. And we don't take this quite in the way I'm going to say it, but I'm going to put it, we're a yes board.
So this is kind of an aside, but a very brilliant young lady graduated from BFA a couple of years ago, my niece. And she graduated from UNH in a couple of years, and now she's doing her internship through Northeastern. So she's only 22 years old and had to go into this very expensive building in New York City. And the roof was leaking. And talking with all these men saying, we need to cut a hole here, a hole here, a hole, and they're all saying, you know, arguing, well, we can't do that, it's not our fault. And she was really clear, we're not here to assign fault, we're just here to fix the problem. And so I just want to, for me, it's just really important to fix the problem.
It's all valid points. I really like your idea of looking at it from a pre-K job perspective, because we've been doing that, and that I've written it down sometime.
Okay, in an effort to get more information, let's go to administrator reports. Bill?
Thank you. So as you've heard, I have been working a lot at BFA, which has been great. I can't echo loud enough how tremendous the staff is up there. They've been very, very helpful. And not only with the proficiency system, but just as a group to work with and solve problems, because we've been right in that mode. We're solving the problem, not playing stuff, solving the problem. And people have been generally really approaching it that way. So there's a great staff up there, as I'm sure there are on the other boards. I just haven't had the time. And I want to get there. Joe and I talked about that the other day. It's like, Joe, I've got to get over 6 sacks since the first day. The other good work that's going on is construction. We are in the midst of, after you approve the pre-qualification standards, we're in the midst of qualifying contractors to do the work at BFA. As I think I said to you last time, but if I didn't, either I want to repeat myself or say it again, it is a very complex project. The utilities up there are extremely complex that are under Ferris Street. So that is a real majority of this work, and we're figuring it out. Last thing is doing a good job. Leah's through, and Chris and I and last today. We're also pre-qualifying, or not pre-qualified, but we're getting bids back on clerk of the works. That will be the board's eyes on the project 3 days a week. And that's about what usually goes for this size of project. Someone who's experienced in construction trades to be able to say, hey, it's not quite being spec, or how about this? And they're going to help us through the design phase of it too. At Fairfield, we're working on a couple alternates. We've been very close to the property line, so we're taking a look at that situation right now. The addition was, as you may recall, as you look at the building, would be to the left of it or to the north of the building. And we're well within the easement setbacks. We're just looking at what that looks like. So we're trying to look at a couple alternatives there. And
So is meaning doing it in a different place?
Not necessarily reconfiguring, right now we're reconfiguring.
And the orange mesh that's up right now, is that?
That's the configuration. That's the latest reconfiguration. Right now, is where the orange mess is. We're working with some of the other good work is, and I have to thank my colleagues here at Central Office, and it's the folks that we have on the HR team. They're doing a great job. As you know, I took over a lot of Kathy Fink's responsibility with HR, but I've got three great people, three people, what fraction of they are HR, but who determine that later, but they're all doing great work to keep the HR that's allowing me to do the work up at BFA, and then starting to look at negotiations. So those have been kind of the highlights of the past month.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Not that you have not enough to do. I know we haven't heard about policies or updating any policies. And usually we always have something coming up. Do you know if we have anything coming due? Or maybe you don't, I don't know.
Well, actually, we do, we talked about it. Most of the stuff now has been updated.
Yeah.
And we are starting to look, and actually, I've asked Brenda to be very involved because she's a policy guru. So, and I think, did you tell me, Brenda, we've got a couple that that's coming up the pike or not?
Yeah, I'm looking at some changes that the SBA has suggested.
But we did a really good job of that.
No, I know.
Those first few years.
Yeah, that's
But we
what I
should
mean.
periodically go
We
through.
should.
That, and we just haven't heard about it. I'm just
Yep.
curious.
But it's probably good to,
I agree.
Okay. Just,
Did we work out the healthcare one? Whether we
No,
need to
that's
do
one
that?
of them that's.
that's not what it's right this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that it though?
I was gonna stop. Like more, I see what's happening, I'll keep rambling.
No, that's fine.
So our data teams have been, progress has been going well. The principals are just amazing at getting the data ready for their teams, their agendas, really using that collaboration time well. I've been attending those data team meetings, and I can see, the teachers are really asking the right questions. They're having rich conversations about student learning. And we're finishing up our diagnostic assessments in reading and math, and that's going to be data available for them to dig deeper into the foundational skills and all that. And we're having our first Maple Run coaches meeting next week, which is going to be like a venue to try to coordinate what's going on in our schools, to get that communication going, to get what's working, what can we learn from each other. That's going to be very powerful in trying to align our processes and practices.
Thank you.
I'll keep mine very brief, but I'm going to share one thing because it's something that I'm very passionate about and very excited about. Something that's starting to take up a lot of my time and will take up even more of my time is working and collaborating not only with central office, but with all of the schools and all of the administrators on building a system of behavioral support for the district and really looking at how we can build that system from the ground up and look big picture instead of looking at individual pockets of need. So the whole overall goal and the focus is we're able to wrap these kids that might require a higher level of service and require some pretty intensive interventions, and we're able to support that in-house, and that our response doesn't always have to immediately be who can we contract with and who is available out in the community that we can come into our schools and provide that support. One of the big pros, in my opinion, for that is we would have total control over supervision and a structure of what those supports and services will look like, and we're not kind of passing the responsibility on an outside service provider to provide direct clinical oversight and supervision of our staff working with the kids that meet the highest level of mental health and behavioral needs throughout the district.
So you're saying that those children who require the highest level will be taken care of in-house?
Yes, that's the goal. is to start having those conversations, because I feel that there's definitely an ability and a capacity to start those conversations and to start looking big picture on how we can grow our own.
I think you mean probably raising the level of the children that we can service in-house.
Well, I'm thinking, I'll use an example. So there's let's say there's a student in a building that requires one-on-one support and supervision. Currently, we're in a position where if that focus of the support is behaviorally based, we're often looking at NCSS and contracting for behavioral intervention service and supports, which then trickles into clinical oversight and consultation of behavioral programming, functional behavior assessments, and we're starting to look in ways where we can build that system throughout the district and not having to contract with NCSS for those specific services. There are other services that will continue to be very appropriate for us to contract with NCSS regarding maybe medication management or counseling.
Right, so part of that assessment would also be what resources would be needed to accommodate that assessment, is that correct?
Yeah, so that's where the conversations are starting, is looking at what we currently have in place and what we need to add to be able to create a larger system.
Now, from a clinical perspective, does that put any liability on the district? I mean, not at all, as long as we have the ability, I guess, or approved resources to go that high, I guess.
Yeah, there's no liability. The only liability is in making sure the people that we have in positions are qualified to be in those positions, and the people providing the clinical oversight and the direct supervision are again qualified to be providing the level of supervision that is required for those positions.
I'm sorry, you just said that there's no liability? There's people who are doing, assisted restraints and whatnot. How can you say there's no liability in that?
I'm saying that there's no liability as long as you have people who are properly trained and supervised fulfilling those.
But even with people who are properly trained and supervised doesn't mean that people always carry out a specific situation the way that they're supposed to. So there would definitely be liability.
Correct. Maybe I'm using the wrong word, but we wouldn't have more liability in building our own system than we do contracting. We're still liable.
Yeah, not much more focused, maybe that's more general. Because I mean, that to me is like huge. I mean, that's almost building our own NCSS.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah. We're not violating anything
No,
by
no, no.
starting the conversation about how to
Correct.
transfer their services into our own district.
But where do we draw the line from the school district to providing those services? I'm just
It's a big conversation
Yeah,
in terms of when public schools become treatment facilities.
Yes, and that's why we need to start the conversation, because we definitely have a level to meet, and we need to be looking at where we can go and what paths we can take to get there. So this isn't something that is going to be put in place and implemented tomorrow or next month, but we need to start having the conversations so we're appropriately meeting the needs.
Is the push to have these conversations a financial one?
No, for me, that's part of the conversation, but for me, it's about treatment fidelity and making sure that the programming that we're putting in place, we have direct oversight over that programming, and we're responsible for that programming, and we're training our own staff.
So you have concern with the fidelity that's being implemented through NCSS?
I wouldn't say that I have the concern over the fidelity. I think it's very valuable to have your own oversight and your own training system in place when you're working with mental health and kids with behavioral needs. I'm not questioning the fidelity. I think that we can do the same thing in-house. It's a bigger systems question and conversation because it trickles into all facets of public school systems and kids of all ages and from all backgrounds.
So the assessment would include the benefits and the drawbacks and the...
Yes. And it's not a conversation that is led by me or one person or a decision that is made by one person. It's a much bigger conversation district-wide, but we're just starting to kind of pick away at those concerns and those dynamics and having the conversation, getting things on paper to see what they could look like, and how do we get there if that's our end goal.
Thank you.
But I do think it's extremely exciting to be early October and starting these conversations when I didn't know if we would be able to until maybe a couple of years out. So I think that speaks to the staff that we have in the district and all of our buildings, that there definitely is a want and a desire to just question the possibility and start the conversation to see where it could go and what it could look like. Thank you.
Thanks. Melanie?
Well, it's September and the students are set, we finished September, they've settled in, it's October and things are starting to, they need support. Some of the trauma and behavior pieces start very early with our students. So the more supports we have and, our schools do their absolute best wrapping around all of these students. We just have some with a lot of high needs. But on a very positive note, building from that, we have some great people that work with them. And I had one of those lovely conversations this morning, actually, with one of our district physical therapists. And as you've probably heard, and our principals have shared at some point, they have bicycle weeks and things like that, working with our students, teaching them, some of them teaching them to ride the bicycle, part of it's that health and wellness. Some of our students that do have, higher medical needs don't usually have such an option. A group that has partnered with some of our folks, MBUX, donates they have a therapeutic bicycle program and will design bicycles. So we have one example. The pictures are actually, I talked to both of the parents individually. They're on our Maple Run early childhood page, but they created bicycles specifically geared for them. So they get that same experience of the pedaling and full inclusion with their peers, which was amazing. And getting them out of the bicycles was a lot harder than getting them in. They had a blast. The wonderful part is the bicycles are not donated to the school, they're donated to the families. And once they outgrow those, they trade those in. And if the need is still there, they will create them a new bike that will meet their needs. So it's wonderful to see how the community comes into our schools and then supports our families in that direction. So it's a credit to everyone and what everybody is doing in that direction. So I'm very excited for those pieces. And I know Tim left, but I'll tell you the pavilion was lovely, and watching the early childhood children grow up into the kindergarten and first grade soccer. They had a blast out there by the pavilion and having soccer under the lights for those that got to play. Oh, there you are. I thought you did. It was amazing. So
That was so much fun.
it's really nice to see that. And again, that's bringing all the little ones into the high school and that dream of getting there. And, they'll have those great grades when they get there. All of that settled. So I'm just very proud of all of, the way, our administration works with our littles. They wrapped around them inside the building, even at the high school with it, they've just put in, the construction group has been building an all-natural playground. You can probably tell me who that person is, but it's beautiful out there. You should check out some of the woodwork. And just to speak to those pieces. And so I'm very grateful with the early childhood program. I know that was a question, was it going to get funded for this year? But very appreciative. We're working on Alexia program, the technology at Town School right now already there, they're ready to go. So I'm just very appreciative for all of that. So thank you for the support from everyone that way.
What was the name of the program that donated the bicycles to the family?
MBUX.
What does that stand for?
Oh, that part I'll probably
AMBUCS?
AMBUCS, yes.
Okay.
And I can send you the link. It's called an Amtrak's program. But I'll tell you, I'm gonna have to show you the picture.
I can look it up, I'm sure. Oh, if you have it.
Look at the little students, he is so excited, sorry. But just the grin on his face is worth every moment. And that's part of that social emotional piece that we all need to build and really support in these early development years so they do become citizens and the citizens that we want them to be. So it helps make them a very strong group.
Thank you. Martha?
So I've been working on getting our business office staff back in full swing. Jen, my accounting supervisor, retired on September 20th. My payroll coordinator, Brienne, took her position, so then we needed to fill the payroll coordinator position, which we just filled with Jean Elliott Golden. And then 2 weeks ago, my accounts payable clerk informed me that she's retiring on October 11th. And so I've been working on interviewing to fill our accounts payable position. In all of that, we're working on the transition on the e-finance software program. So we've been putting in some long hours, getting the information migrated from our legacy system into the e-finance. We've got our first parallel payroll run, which is scheduled for October 15th through the 18th. Business office group, so there won't be anybody in the business office that week. We will be in Middlebury, working with the other 2 supervisory union school districts that are also implementing the same January 1st deadline. Going down there and going through our parallel payroll, making sure everything matches, and if it doesn't, where we need to make changes and adjustments. So that will be interesting. And we just barely started the conversations about next year's budgeting process with the leadership team, so that's also in the back of my mind, niggling there, trying to find a space to come in.
Now in December, right?
So
has the training been good at least from the software companies?
it's gotten better. It's gotten better. The state did determine that what they had contracted with for support for the transition was not sufficient. And so they have ramped it up, which has helped immensely. We have had some dedicated time with a trainer via webinars, which is helpful, and that has been a lot better than it had been, but the videos are still awful to watch.
Martha, could you clarify why we're going to e-finance?
Yes, so the legislature mandated that all the school districts in the state of Vermont will migrate to this one software program, which in the end is supposed to make our life easier because the state will have access to our data, and instead of us having to do annual statistical reporting that usually takes me a couple of weeks to prepare and submit, they will be able to just capture that information, and it will be the same software across the state. The issue that I have with it is that the program will do what it needs to do. There's no question about that. It's just, it's a little bit less, I don't want to say it.
Elegant.
Exactly. Less elegant than the system we currently have, but it will do what we need it to do. And with it being across the state, we'll have, the whole state will be asking for the different pieces of support. So it should be, it should work out.
And the other frustration with it, some people have, including our district, is probably 70% of the state was using iVision,
The system we're currently on.
and which we were.
Agency of Education went back to legislature and said that's impossible to do, although they thought that they could do it. And so the legislature did relax the timeline. I think the last school districts have until July 1st of 2022, I believe. And the Agency of Education has backed out a schedule of which schools are gonna go which years. And because we had volunteered to go this January, we were stuck with that time.
I was just gonna say, haven't we gone first for a lot of things
Yes,
already?
we have.
Can we catch a break on something?
Well, the thought when I decided we would do this was that we would jump on board, we'd look at it, and we'd review it, and we'd figure out, how much work it was gonna be, and if it looked like it was gonna be a little bit overwhelming, we would say we'll go the next round. Well, they didn't allow that at that point. They said, no, you said you're going January 1, you're going January 1, so we will make it to January 1. We will get payroll processed and we will get bills paid. Just don't know exactly what they look like right now. But it will work.
Thank you, Martha. Board announcements. Anyone on the board have news? Power cross code?
Yes, I want.
Yeah.
They raised a lot of money and the two schools had a great time. Lots of friendships between the two schools. It's good. It's great.
Do we know how much money costs or?
$120,000, is that?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the sounds about.
Historically, it's been 26, 27, so
That's amazing.
that's not unusual if it was 20 and
It
possibly
was
more.
in the 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terry was talking about today how she wanted an escort to the bank.
Right, she said, she has $25,000. Wow.
It is true, we had
That's awesome.
sufficient money so that Corporal Tally was
Escorting.
Sergeant Tally.
Okay, agenda
I hate to
items.
say it was raining, and yet it was still a wonderful event for both communities. And the speeches that were made by the kids who have suffered with cancer and talked about how those fundraising efforts have changed their life at Camp Tecumseh and what that meant to them. And also, the funds from the Dick Bashaw Fund, how truly amazing that is that quote-unquote rival schools can get together and put on an entertaining game with a big crowd under really bad weather conditions and do all that to help those kids. Walking in and hearing, those speeches from those students I presume, but those kids who have been suffering with cancer and knowing that kids from both communities have made that kind of a difference was really touches the heart. So those are the kinds of things I think we need to hold on to and cherish because it really is speaks very, very well of the kids in our community and the kids in Swanton as well. So
It makes you proud of your community and your kids. It's great.
There's an article here that says over the last 10 years, they've raised more than $150,000.
Amazing.
For Camp.
It's pretty good. Item 9, agenda items for future meetings.
I think we'll probably have a transcript up there.
For sure, yeah.
What about my two audits?
We are actually, it's funny you mentioned that. If you want to go further up, I had scheduled for the next time we're here. We did a technology audit last year, had a person come in, a specialist, and I thought the board might like to see that audit. So we're gonna do a presentation on that. That would be the whatever November first meeting is.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have something coming up on the 9th.
Yes, on the 9th is our board retreat training, a week from here, yes. What time is that, 5:30?
5:30 to 9.
Now?
Is that in place of our second meeting this week?
No, it's in between. So, we're making you come more, it's here.
So you're busy people for the next 3 weeks.
My knitting ladies are all mad.
So then we'll still have a meeting on the 16th.
So it'll be 3 meetings.
Yep. Okay, we do not have need for an executive session, and seeing as how we're at the end of our agenda, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, I appreciate it.
I